Meeting to order. I'd like to begin by asking Mr. Edison if he'll lead us in our pledge and our prayer, please.
Father, we just thank you, Lord, for your grace and mercy. Thank you, Lord, for loving us. Lord, we just thank you for the blessings you've given us of life and the blessing of eternal life. Lord, just be with us tonight as we go throughout our meeting. Help us make the best decisions that we can for our children, our kids, and our communities, and our county. And just give us wisdom and discernment and all the things that we do. We ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Edison. Board members, do I hear a motion to adopt our agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to adopt our agenda. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to welcome all of our visitors and give you an opportunity to come to the podium and speak. And also, if there are any public comments that someone who could not make it. No public comments sent in today. Anyone that would like to address the board? Well, thank you all for being here. We're thrilled and glad to have everyone always and want everyone to participate in our meeting. So thank you very much. I'll turn it over now to Ms. Lake for our final hearing on our budget.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so this afternoon, we're here to adopt the final millage rate and final budget for this fiscal year 2021. So I'm going to review the changes and differences in what was advertised in the paper for our tentative budget and what is being proposed today. Most of our discussion will just be a review of what was discussed in early August when we adopted our tentative millage and budget. And this is the second and final of two public hearings on this subject. And this means any member of the public attending these meetings are welcome to comment or ask questions throughout the process. So first we'll start with TRIM, or truth in millage. So we need to settle on and adopt the final millage rate for this fiscal year. The final rate that is being proposed is 3.739. The same as the tentative. We are using a certified taxable value of $2,316,522,396. And our RLE, or required local effort, again, is the 3.739, and this is the number given to us by the Department of Education to match our prior year tax collections. So as we discussed at our tentative budget adoption, the RLE is lower this year when compared to last year, but it's higher than the rollback rate, so we had to advertise for a tax increase. The rollback rate is the rate that would generate the same amount of property tax revenues as approved for the prior year. When the tax base is increased, like this year, the rollback rate is less than the prior year's rate. And this simply means the tax values have increased. So with this RLE, we would receive more in local taxes when compared to last year, but the local tax rate didn't increase. A lot. Anybody have any questions on that? So again, we are proposing a final millage rate of 3.739. If anyone has any questions. My language is off, so we need to adopt a motion to approve a final millage, not tentative.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move to approve final millage.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
That's the question.
Yes.
What's the total millage, all villages combined?
5.98. Oh, you can't see that. 5.987. That includes our required local effort of 3.739. That's set for us by the state. That includes a basic discretionary operating of 0.748, again set by the state. That includes capital outlay of 1.5. The board has a discretion to lower our capital outlay if they so choose, which they did not. Thank you, board. So it is 5.987. Yes. Now, these funds can't be used in the same manner, but that's the total. Okay, that's the total. So let's move on to discuss the budget. And this is the budget advertisement for our tentative budget, and at that time, it was $96,286,900.90. Our final has increased, and the proposed final budget is $100,329,589.97, which is a net increase of almost $3.7 million. But you'll see most of these changes are simply due to finalizing fund balances for 1920, and really the bulk of it is just updating our federal budgets to include multiple CARES Acts. So let's review the changes for each fund. So here you notice that 8% is coming from the general fund, a little over 286, almost 287,000, with the bulk, again, 80% of that increase coming from special revenue. And you can see that's where the almost 3.7 million came from in changes. And I think everone should have this handout. And this we'll just go through and it'll show you we'll walk through each fund. So the general fund, you can see based on the changes that really those changes are coming from a couple grant changes, indirect costs that we're getting from the CARES Act, but the bulk of it again is coming from just the fund balance completion. Should be a separate packet for you, Brad. I think you're looking at the PowerPoint.
I see it there. I'm sorry.
The next one is our special revenue fund, and here's where 80% of the change is coming from, and that's coming from almost 2.5 of that is coming from CARES Act. So there are 3 now CARES Acts. There might be 4. And then, of course, finalizing the food service fund balance is where the remainder of that increase is coming from. The next is our debt service fund, and it was just a change in the fund balance. Capital projects, we finalized a couple projects, and that increased our expenditures by $62,000, and then we also finalized the fund balance, and that grew by $115,000. And then finally, our internal service fund. The changes there are just from finalizing expenditure, the last of the expenditures for the fiscal year and the fund balance. Does anybody have any questions on those changes or the impact of the funds? Sounds like a lot, but really most of it is just coming from federal. Our federal data comes to us a little bit later, especially this year with those CARES Acts. All right, so before we move on to revenue sources and the expenditures that are contained within this final budget, let's talk a minute about the ending fund balance for the general fund and estimated ending fund balance for 2021, so the end of this year. So you'll see right now our ending fund balance is a little over 7.4 million, and that's final. That correlates with the annual financial report that you'll be approving tonight. You see our 5% held back for or committed for our restricted financial condition ratio is 2.2. We have restricted of almost 540,000. We have assigned of a little over 2 million and unassigned of 2.6 million. So that's where we are. So now let's talk about where we're going with this budget. So with this budget, I can estimate how 2021 will end. And so this is in a perfect world, no changes in FEFP, no changes in FTE, no proration, nothing. We're going to have a wonderful year, and we're going to get all of our money that we have in this budget. and we're gonna spend everything we have in this budget. So what we would end with is a fund balance of 6.7 million. Again, we have reserve funding of 2.3 committed funds there, restricted of 800, 1.3 for assigned, and 2.3 for unassigned. So I really wish was the end of our conversation. But here is a more realistic ending fund balance for next year. So we are estimating a mid-year loss of revenue due to proration of a little over 1.7 million. Proration occurs when the state reduces our budget to keep the state budget balanced as written in the Constitution. So not necessarily would this reduction be because we've seen a reduction in enrollment, and that's just important to remember. We think it is a real possibility due to the anticipated loss in sales tax revenue to the state. I think now we would have to collect a little over 200 billion, I believe is what or million in growth every month to get back to even where we were when they estimated the budget in January. So another way we might see a reduction in funding is with a loss of FTE or enrollment. And currently we're cautiously optimistic on this front, but we're still facing a huge loss due to proration. So I would still advise the board, given the estimated loss, to protect this fund balance in an effort to reduce possible job loss to a proration of this size, especially since we are not currently forecasting a loss in FTE. So we really can't, at that point, it doesn't support a change in staff size. So if you have a school full of students, need the staff, but you're losing 1.7, that is why you built this reserve in this fund balance. Does anybody have any questions on that? I don't know why this is, I'm sorry about this, that's why I printed out, but whatever reason this, my graphs don't like me today. So let's talk a little bit about where the revenue sources and expenditures that are contained within this final budget. So if you go to the heading of where the money comes from, you'll be able to see most of these graphs, or you'll at least be able to see the percents that aren't showing up. So it looks like this. So these are our revenue sources for all funds. So right now you see that we have our state sources are accounting for 35% of our funds, with the majority of that coming from the FEFP or through the state. And the FEFP is the largest revenue source in this category, and it's 99% of this source and 71% of our total resources for fiscal year 21. Local sources account for 11%. Required local effort that we just passed, the RLE, that comprises 89% of our local revenue sources. Our fund balances account for 18%. Capital outlay for 16%, internal services 6%, federal 6%, food service 5%, and then interfund transfers at 2%, and debt service at 1%. So that's just a breakdown of where our revenue sources come from by fund. So that's what I just read through. So let's talk a little bit about the fund balances by fund. Information. All right. Man, this is not liking me. Well, technology's great until it doesn't. Here we go. So this slide breaks down our fund balances by fund as well as by fund balance categories. So the categories are important because our fund balance is not comprised of flexible dollars. So the flexible dollars are what are used to support the majority of our salaries. So on the original slide, we saw the fund balance is made up 18% of our resources. So 40% of that is coming from general fund, 36% from capital, 13% from self-insurance, and 11% from food service. However, not all of these reserve funds are available. Some of these funds are already allocated and unable to be used in other areas. We have under 1% for non-spendable, so that's like food service inventory. We have 62%, which is for restricted funds, and that encompasses all funds. Assigned is the general fund, and that's 11%. The 5% minimum financial condition ratio held in the general fund is almost 12%, and the unassigned sitting in the general fund is 14%. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, so we'll talk about where the money goes. So that's also in your handout. The first graph breaks down the expenditures by object. So this is all funds, again, not just the general fund, this includes all. And then the second graph gives a more detailed view of employee salary specifically and shows the types of staff we employ. So the first is showing you by object, the largest portion of that pie is just going to employee salaries. You've got almost 50% of that pie going to salaries and benefits. The capital outlay is so big because it's recognizing the special facilities funding for year one, so it's skewing it a little bit. That'll go down after, what, 3 years? So, and then a breakdown in category by the staff. You see the largest piece of that pie is classroom teachers was 53%, I believe, going to that. Other support personnel, so those are like your ESPs, bus drivers, custodians, front office staff is 22%. You've got 10% between the administration and the district and the schools. And those would also include some office staff as well. 6% going to aides. I wish I knew what that last one was.
Substitutes,
Thank you. Do you know the percent?
3%. Wasn't there some legislation that tied our funding to having to be above 80% spent on the students, that there was some talk about that?
Yeah, but I don't think they've ever figured out the definitions.
Right.
So there's been talk about it for years, but I don't think it's ever set it down to what.
And that most likely will show up from our cost report. When we do our cost report, they look at those.
Well, in looking at this, we meet that threshold if you take into, take out the administration, both district and school, which I can argue that a school administrator is valuable and a part of that. So we're at 90-10, so we're doing our job, so.
Yeah. All right, so where the money goes by function. So here, we're looking at the bulk of our funds going to support student instruction. And that would include ESE and all that. I'll break all that down in just a minute because there's different types of instruction within the student instruction. The second is going to facilities and construction. Again, that's so large because of special facilities. Then we've got general support services, student instruction and support services. So those are where your guidance counselors sit, your reading coaches, graduation coaches, self-insurance, operational plant, transportation, maintenance, and then we round down with the transfers and the debt services. All right, so then this goes within each one of those broader functions and kind of breaks that down so you can see where the bulk of our money is going in student instruction is to support basic K-12 instruction. The next would be our ESE services. And then of course your career ed and your pre-K. And you see the bulk of that money is simply going to support, of course, salaries and benefits with close to 80%. Just covering salaries and benefits.
Okay. Is this for like Edgenuity, Canvas would fall under this also, this category?
No. Yes, actually, they would. They're 5100 function, so yes, this is where they would fall. They would fall under your purchase services, so that 12.55%, that 3.8. Next is general support areas. So this has district level support, school board, and school administration, and you still see the bulk of that is school administration at 53%, district, and then the school board. And the majority of that does go for salaries and benefits. People. And here we have student and instruction support. So here's, this is a large category. It has our guidance. It has all the PD, the training for teachers we do. It has instructional and curriculum development. It has health, IT, media, psychological, and parent involvement and social work. Rounds out that graph. And then this is just showing you how we spend for operation of plant and student transportation. And maintenance of plant and administrative technology services, so IT. Well, IT spreads across different functions, but this is a placeholder for our E-rate, so that this actually is skewed. It's a little bit higher, but we have to have a placeholder for the E-rate revenue that they estimate for me, so I have to show an offset with an expenditure, and I put it out here so I can identify it easier. We really do not spend 20% materials and supplies on this line. It'll probably go back into the schools. So then those were all funds. So this is just looking at general fund and showing you how the general fund is spent. So the bulk of it is spent for student instruction, then general support services, student instruction support services next, operation of plant, student transportation, and maintenance of plant. So this is also why the general fund is very sensitive to any changes in those FEFP dollars. That's a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions?
That's great, and I like the way everything's broken out, and I like seeing these pies and colors, so that helps, but which one, like where the money goes, which one has had the most increase? Because they're all on different pages, I can't ask, a certain one, but which one has really had the most increase?
These have stayed consistent. You're going to see your largest increase in just the capital outlay because we've had to increase that to recognize the self-insurance. But are you talking about specific?
No, I'm not. I'm
General fund?
asking in general, which one have you noticed that, in all these and the
These have
different ones?
stayed pretty consistent, and that is how we tried to budget this year, was for consistency with last year. So there's no real growth. Now our fund balance grew. That one grew larger than expected, but again, that's because we shut down the last quarter, so that spending has ramped back up.
Right.
Kim, you said that anticipating a proration crystal ball figure, and I think you said about 1.7 million. Okay, is that is that an actuarial number, or is that something the state of Florida's given us, or?
That is something that's come from Jim Hamilton. That might as well be in the state of Florida. He's the guru, and so that's where he's estimating, and he took those estimates based on the loss in sales tax, and then used our percent of the FEFP dollars to come up with what our loss might look like. Now that would include charters that would be passed along to charters, but those probably, their portion would be around 25,000, 30,000 each. So I feel comfortable in that number, but what is so fluid is the loss in sales tax, is how the state's going to recover, how quick the state's going to recover, and then also what the state has in their reserve funding that they're willing to use to offset that loss. And also how the other districts are going to report in October. We have seen some of the counties saying their FTE has taken a dive. And if that happens and the state doesn't hold us harmless, they would recover some of that FEFP from one district and it would go out to another. So they might be able to balance the budget that way or reduce the proration that way. But I don't think that's what's going to happen.
And you're hearing from other district financial officers
We aren't speaking right now because we are all so thin. So Jim Hamilton is kind of like sitting at the top and he's gathering this information from all these other districts through FADS and he's spitting it back out to us. So yes, in essence, we are.
So there's someone on the radar as revenues change or for good or bad that we have. to look
Yes,
for.
the last update we got from him was for the, I think it was the August revenue conference. And so that's where we know the loss is really huge, but the state's gonna start comparing month to month now. So in August, the state compared to January and it showed a huge loss. Now, in August, they'll compare to July. And so the loss is gonna start to get smaller and smaller, but you shouldn't get excited about that because this budget's built off January.
Right.
I believe there was a revenue estimated conference today at 1:00, if I remember correctly, so.
Yes, and that would be the one for August, so the July one was the last. So we are getting monthly notifications for FADS and breakdowns from Jim Hamilton, just to help keep us all abreast of the changes, because they're very fluid, but they're very important, and they can have a devastating impact. If they're greater than 1.7, you see we only have flexibility of about 600,000 there.
And there's two potential pitfalls. He talks about proration, which is just a cut into the revenues. But then the state budget's on an FTE basis, and they're going to only give out so much money. So if there's more kids than they anticipate, the value of each kid or value of FTE goes down, and that's how you get an FTE proration as well, or cut. So there's two potentials there. It just depends on what it is. And we're going to get more into our enrollment here later on. When we talk about campus.
Do I hear a motion to approve our final budget as advertised and to adopt the resolution 21-04?
So,
Are there any other questions or discussion? Yes, Terry?
I wouldn't know.
That's it.
For me, yeah,
Because I think we have 16 million.
that's exactly why it is, yeah. Yeah. No, you have to record all of your capital dollars, so it's amounting to 1612 is what we're getting from the state.
Local dollars also included in that, Mr. Terry.
And fund balances, and the,
$60 million for the first.
no, he's including fund balance and all of that stuff that has grown so that we could build the school, so that's all recorded in there, yeah. And then there's the teacher salary increase that hasn't been distributed, but so you've got to, I don't even remember what that one is right now. Melody might know, is it over 200 million? I don't know, but it's sitting out there and it's propping up the budget too, it's making it higher.
It looks like this is the first time we've reached 100 million marks for this school board.
Within that,
Yes.
Oh, because of the school project.
there's other issues in there that are making it look higher than what. we're going
Yeah.
to.
I wouldn't look at the 100 million. If you're really wanting to look at the changes in the school district, you're going to want to look budget to budget from the fund. And then you're going to see the growth in the fund. You're going to see our general fund has not grown to the extent that 100 million is making you think. What has grown is our capital. So that's all funds.
Just, I guess, just the teacher school projects, $12.5 million. Then you get $2.2 million CARES money.
Correct, that's true. Our federal budgets are bigger this year than they have been in the past.
Your salary is much bigger, I'm told, than $100 million.
Yeah, so, I don't know, did I break a record? Do I win something?
Yeah, you want a prize?
If I don't spend it all.
I should see the news.
That's long.
Yeah, you'll have some chocolate here. I do have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for our final budget. Thank you so very
Thank
much.
Thanks.
And thanks for all the hard work there. It was a lot. And it will continue to be. Item E, our Williston land, Mr. Locke.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As you know, the board had previously approved a tentative contract with the McCoy family for some land around JB and the Williston High School football stadium. JB is landlocked. There's no very limited room for expansion. So that was one of the reasons for this proposal, and also to provide some additional stadium parking in time of athletic events, or JBE parent parking in time of things like parent nights and things like that. So for that reason, the board had approved a possible purchase of this land. So we followed all the procedures that are outlined by statute. We've advertised this potential purchase for the required amount of time. We've put in the request for the appraisal, and we have that appraisal back. And so now we're basically at the point to ask permission to approve the purchase and approve the contract.
I'll move the approval for discussion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think it needs to be brought forward, but the appraisal, I spent a good bit of time looking at it today and asked Mr. Lott if it's someone we've used in the past. But anyway, the appraised value didn't come back at offer, and I think that needs to be brought out. But I think if you look at the situation that we're in and the opportunity we have, and I'll also ask you to look at the addresses of the comparables. I got concerns about them being comparable. So I think if you look at comparables, I know your plantation right across the road, across 41, and something that's comparable versus W. Thrasher Drive in Bronson. If I look that address up, I think that's right on 24, just outside south of town. What I'm saying, I'm not saying they're comparable. I would argue that they're comparables. If I look on the property appraiser's website, like I did today, and do recent sales in the area, I think you'll realize that recent sales within the area of those properties will be more value than what we're offering for the property.
And even the adjacent McCoy property right next to it is priced at $39,000 an acre. So if you want to talk true comparisons, that's right next to it is at $39,000.
That's all I have.
So where did we get this appraiser from? Was it ordered by?
Ocala. It came from from Cookie King, who searched for people to provide the appraiser. And we had two that came forth. This one was much cheaper and quicker. The other was 3 times as expensive and was going to take 4 times longer. So that's why we went with the most cost efficient.
They meet qualifications necessary to be
Yes.
appraiser for this purpose.
Is there any more questions or discussion?
And once again, for the record, this money is being encumbered from the sale of the Williston Middle High School property.
Yes, sir. For the sale of Williston Middle School.
School properties.
It's capital funds that were not already budgeted.
Yes, Terry.
Both of those fields that those people normally park for football, both those grassy fields over there, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, across the street from Joyce Bullock and the football stadium. It's right there, pretty close to where the ticket booth is.
It's not the total of both fields, I don't. So you know where the ticket booth is?
Yeah.
If you walked out to go across the road, there's a tree line directly across. So just to the east of it a little bit is the property line, and it would go from there until Dr. Reddy's old office on the west side.
So you both of those fields.
Part of the east field, not all of the east field. I just don't want to be misleading with what we're saying.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to acquire the Williston land. That would be great. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move over to our request to advertise for our public hearing. Our school board policies.
Yes, ma'am. As you know, several times a year, it seems to be coming
More often.
more often, we get the NEFAC board policies. These come to us in a nice little electronic packet based off of changes in state statute usually. Almost all of these are fit into that category. These came to us from NEFAC. There's one that does not, and as I go through these, I'll point that out to you. But basically, the majority of them, as you'll see, comes from E-Verify requirements, which are new. And so they're basically outlined within these model policies. So the first one, safe and secure schools. The changes are in red, and you'll see that there's some new requirements. We have a lot of students that are very mobile. We have a high mobility rate. They transfer from one school to the other. And so the first change there basically just kind of covers us when we have a student who has a threat assessment and possibly has some intervention services from their previous school, and then they transfer to a new school. And this is just a way for us to make sure that whatever they had in place there is in place at our new school. So that's what that paragraph is all about. And then it talks about the safety programs to be established that's consistent with the provisions of policy 8.01, which is safety. That is school safety, 8.01. So that's the primary change in that segment. On the next page, under number 4, we talk about emergency closure procedures. Obviously, in a time of emergency, like for example, something like what, God forbid, something like we had in Parkland, where we have an emergency situation, we have to close that school quickly. Then this gives the superintendent, and if the superintendent's not available, gives basically the principal permission to make an emergency decision and close that school at such time. And then 7 talks about safety and violence prevention, and basically gives some requirements for us to develop a violence prevention plan for use, and that should be used by all schools. And basically identify potentially dangerous situations. We already do much of this through our crisis prevention and interventions trainings that we do with our staff, our administrative staff, our ESC teachers. Basically try to identify threats and people who are upset and people who are volatile, and how do we diffuse the situation and so forth. So that's kind of what that falls within that realm. Are there any questions on this particular proposed policy? Okay. 3.30 are on automatic external defibrillators, which we have had these for a while now. This actually the statute came in a while back, and we've had them. We've had them on campuses. We usually, every campus has a couple actually. So this basically just puts it in writing, talks about the requirements to have the AED, basically to make sure that people are trained on how to use the AED who might be most likely to use it. Currently, we do that typically at the beginning of the school year in pre-planning. We have all of our coaches. We have various school personnel like ESC students or teachers who have students who may be special needs and may fall into some health concerns. So the school nurses and people like that at the school are trained on how to use the AEDs and perform CPR at our schools. So these things, we're really already doing these things. And then, of course, it also references Florida High School Athletic Association. And one new thing is a little bit about it is the location of the device shall be registered with local emergency medical services with their director. So there's a few more requirements as far as what we need to do in regard to the AED than was in there before. But certainly, we've heard stories about how valuable these devices can be and how they can save lives. So
I remember when we got these in the schools and we had a big discussion, but I forgot why did we get these? What prompted that we had them
There was
originally?
there was a state statute which came through that schools needed to have them, and it was based off of a situation where someone died, and so then they passed a law that the schools needed to have these in place.
Okay, I just couldn't remember. Thank you.
Okay, you good?
Mhm.
Okay, along that same line, this is a very similar policy here. This is actually called the Zachary. It's called the 3.31 external heat illness, but it's actually has a name, the Zachary Martin Act. You may have heard of that in the media or the news. The Zachary Martin Act has created this statute, which basically all the statute is outlined here in this policy. There was Zachary Martin was a Riverdale high school football player, and he had a heat illness, severe emergency, and he collapsed and he died 11 days later. So because of that, the legislature created this, and obviously, going along with this policy and the different things that talks about heat illness and how to treat it and things that we need to have in place, just sort of point out that our UF trainers are their policy. I've seen their policy, and it goes through this. In fact, I gave them this policy to look over, make sure this fit into what they were already doing, and they said, yes, this is it to a T. These match their policies and their procedures. So they do a great job as far as this is as well.
That was my question. Who's in charge of monitoring this? Do they do that? But does the athletic director at each school kind of walk through
Yes.
on each sport to make sure they're following?
Yes. But things like, for example, you'll see there, and they talk about wet bulb and globe temperature. They do that at practice, like football practice. They test that. They use that wet bulb test to determine whether or not it's safe for them to even practice, for them to even get on the field. And then if so, what are some certain conditions on that practice? Can they go full pads? Can they go shorts? There are different things that are determined by things like that wet bulb temperature. And again, all this is,
Mr. Long, is there somewhere in there under that wet bulb, I read that earlier, is it the discretion, or is there threshold lines that tells a person what to do? Because I hadn't seen that outline.
there is in the UF policy, yes.
Okay.
So like if the bulb reads this is what you can do. Yes, there is.
Do we know, or is that a secret to us?
No, I have it in the
Okay, I
office.
just
I'll be glad to share that with you.
I just wondered, I think if we shared that with our coaches and our administrators, ADs, I think when they showed the wet bulb, it would stop the argument.
Yes, I thought they had already done that. Of course, we've had some turnover, so there may need to be readdressed, but.
It's probably already been addressed. I'm thinking a year ago.
Right.
Probably already done, Mr. Long, so.
Okay.
Should we put it in there? Is it possible to put it underneath that,
Well, I mean,
right down?
I don't know that we need to get that specific. I mean, it talks about in here, I mean, it's a measurement tool, and it doesn't, I mean, that could change, I guess, depending on when conditions change.
Right, I mean, that might be something that gets updated either as more study is done to it or another test is recommended to be done. We weren't talking about the wet bulb global temperature 10 years ago. So rather than have being locked into our policy, that gives us more flexibility where the science takes us.
This may not have anything to do with it. Like the chart you have, does every school have a copy of that chart, like up in the coach's office? Kind of like your workers' comp things you gotta have up?
The trainers have it. And the trainers just, basically go in and they do the wet bulb test and they say, okay, we're good to go. Or we don't need to practice for a limited amount of time today. Or we need to practice in shorts, whatever they feel is safe. I mean, we're kind of relying on them to take some liability off of us. So, it's,
So trainers administer that. There's always one.
right.
But each coach has to go through the high school's heat exhaustion. They have to watch the video and through that. So, and that's, our athletic directors go and make sure that they've watched that video before any practice takes place and things like that, so.
Yeah, it's a requirement that they go through the heat illness courses, it's a little
Illness,
module.
concussion.
Yep.
Trying to think.
Players as well.
Yes.
Terry had a
So
question.
this is a device that has internal sensors that give you all these parameters that you're supposed to be in terms of humidity, wind, solar, everything. All those internal sensors.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line is the heat and the humidity is the main two things, and they compare those things, and it gives you basically a prescription for what your practice should be that day.
Does all the schools have one of these?
You have trainers who we have those. All of these, a lot of these rules will actually go along with Florida High School Athletic Association recommendations as far as practice. It talks about acclimatization protocols, days of rest and those kind of things. Those things are built into schedules a lot of times too. But, things like you have to go so many days to basically get in shape before you go full pads in football. Those kind of things are built into this as well.
I think it was at the beginning, you can't do 2-a-days anymore, if I read that correctly in there, right?
They're limited. You can do 2-a-days actually, but very limited basis. They maybe not for this year, but I don't think they've done away with 2-a-days completely. One of the main things in here too is the ability to treat someone who has a heat illness, and talks about cooling zones and the tubs. We have the tubs so we put ice in there. We even have backups to that. We have something they call the taco method, which basically is nothing more than a tarp, and the student or whoever is in danger is put in the tarp, and then they basically just dump ice on them and then wrap them up in the tarp. So we have pretty much all those bases are covered. Okay. Student attendance and absences would be our next one, be 5.03. Now, this one is not a NEFAC change. This was not a proposed change that came from NEFAC. All the rest of them were, but this is the one that was not. And really, I would call this more of a COVID change, because we have some students that are option 2. We call it option 2, which basically means they're not there face to face. And so we wanted to add some language in there, and it's further in there. I think it's under number 8, G, and it talks about students who are participating in innovative learning environments, and that's basically the state's language for option 2. That's what the state calls it. So it basically shows how we can count those students as being in attendance, and that's important to make sure that we do get FTE for those students. So we wanted to be safe, and Mr. Bennett actually, I think, is the one who created this, and you see there's some special absence codes for those students who are virtual and who have not logged in, and that's basically what makes you here, attendance. So this was, we felt like this was necessary to make sure we cover all our bases and make sure we get the FTE that we can.
So I think it's a great policy to put in there, and that's certainly necessary, but the teacher's going to flip back and forth and say classroom and virtual and look back and forth on that. Is that what we're saying, do, and look and making sure they're logged in?
If you're option 2 and you haven't logged in, then you'll be a V.
But I'm saying the teacher's going to flip back and forth looking. Is that correct?
The teacher has all of the students on their roster.
And so she has her regular classrooms in her option 2, and they just have to keep up with both of them?
It's the same if I have a student who's in ISS that day. I still got to keep up with them. It's the teacher's responsibility to keep up with the attendance of all the students that they have in their class that are on their roster, regardless of where they're at. I have a student who's on a field trip. They're on the FFA field trip. I still have to document that student's not there. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of part of the job. I mean, in fact, it's a state statutory requirement that they keep up with attendance.
John, on that note, it says students that have not logged in at least once a day. So say it's a middle or high school student, does Canvas capture it as logging in and all the teachers notified that student, I mean, what if they just log in for first period social studies? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
don't log in for the other 6 periods a day. I didn't know if Canvas just
I'll
called it.
defer to Mr. Bennett on that.
It does. There's a comprehensive law in the Canvas system and also an ingenuity for that matter, where you can see what students log into.
I mean, if that counts
There's
as
just one
attendance,
place to go.
okay, if that counts as attendance page, then that would be.
Yeah, I think that's,
simplify it.
right, I think it's wonderful. I think they need to. That's necessary to be in there, so
For
that's,
FTE purposes, they're here for 1 period.
Mhm.
Now, when you get into credits in the high school goes by period when you're talking about grades and absences per period. But when you're talking about FTE, if they're here, they're here.
It's not good for the kid that who knows how to play the system and might log in period 1 to
So
count.
there's different
attendance.
issues that you got to deal with.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, 5.29, it says notification of involuntary examination, but I really call this the Baker Act law. I don't know if that's what the state would call it, but you know, when really and truly, this was the state was very concerned about the number of students, and I think everyone is, the number of students who were Baker Acted in the last year or two, in particular, and so this was basically. This particular statute puts in sort of some extra conditions on the school before law enforcement is called in. So number 3 is really the part that is probably the most prevalent in this policy. Before contacting law enforcement, a principal or designee must verify that de-escalation strategies have been utilized. So in other words, don't be just, you know, too quick in calling the SRO, who, you know, we don't Baker Act, the school does not Baker Act, but this is sort of another step in de-escalating potential circumstances that may lead to a Baker Act, and it still may lead to a Baker Act, but, you know, we try to de-escalate the situation. Again, we have these, the deans and different administrators are trained in how to de-escalate situations and calm kids down. So that's kind of what that's referring to.
Mr. Lott,
Yes.
this is Dr. Hall. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to add that all of our schools, as Mr. Lott has shared, has a team that have been trained, and they're trained, and they do renewal training each year that's provided to our schools by Fiddlers, which is a discretionary project paid for free of charge from Department of Education. So our schools are very well trained in how to de-escalate behaviors. This is nothing new for us. We've been doing this for a number of years.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hall. Anything else on that? Okay, 6.03, employment of personnel. We see one change on number 2. It had FCAT, and although we still have FCAT, it's not our main state assessment any longer. FSA would follow, and that would probably be, you know, the main state assessment that we have. So we just struck that and put state assessment there because, you know, that way we're safe for future changes because it may not be FSA forever either. You know, so that we put state assessment kind of a general term, but probably more relevant actually. And then 5, eligibility, employment eligibility, you'll see that E-Verify reference, and again, that's some new a new law basically saying that people that are applying for these jobs and getting jobs are in fact have the credentials to hold such a job, and you know, are not here illegally or not entitled to that job or not legal to get that job. Are there any questions on that one? Employment of personnel. 6.031, employment defined. And again, there's the very first one you'll see E-Verify again. But basically this tells us some definitions of employment. Full-time, part-time, temporary. and again references the E-Verify requirement. Any questions on that one? Okay, 6.032, appointment of employment or employment requirements. And this one is really, this is a new, entirely new policy. We had some things that, some of these things are already in other aspects like the bus, you see driving record without it pertains to bus drivers. So we had some things in different places in personnel handbooks and so forth, but we wanted to basically combine all those things into one policy. And again, look on under 5, it talks about E-Verify again. So we didn't have E-Verify in any of those policies. So we had to add that. And it talks about, if you read through there, it talks about, initial employment, background checks, fingerprints, all the things that we do anyway. By statute. So all of those things are now just basically put into one board policy instead of being a little bit here, a little bit there. Drug testing. Offering jobs, accepting jobs. Are there any questions on that one? I do want to say too that, these things were, when these policies come in, like that one, we send them as hires because that's more of a personnel one. Again, the one we talked about earlier, that one came from Mr. Bennett. That was more about attendance and coding and all that. So these things go to various people within the district office and they look over it because this is more their area of expertise and make sure everything is looks good. The next one, 8.11, school construction bid process. Once again, you'll see some new language, and a lot of this language revolves around number 1, which talks about E-Verify. And one of the things that we're going to have to do, and we've already had some preliminary discussions with our contractor at the Chiefland School, the new Chiefland School, is to make sure he's aware of these new requirements. And these requirements not only apply to the contractor who has to sign an affidavit saying that he complies with the E-Verify, but also he has to also, we also have to get the subcontractors to make sure that they comply with the E-Verify as well.
Will that limit the people that put their bids in?
Absolutely.
It's really gonna.
I don't know.
I mean, what was it? The last woman, it was we only had a few bids that came in because they didn't meet the requirements.
Yes. I don't know. We don't know yet.
So this is a push down from DOE.
This is statute.
From DOE.
This is law.
Because E-Verify has been a
E-Verify.
miserable failure in the state of Florida. So
Yeah.
we're going to force it through our system.
Wow.
It may not be here long. I don't know, but right now it is, and that's one of the things that we've already been told by that we're going to have to comply with on this new project. Obviously, we are.
We're just going to eliminate a lot of local contractors.
Yes, it really is.
Maybe. I don't know. I think we'll have to wait and see. But there's a lot more to this job than what we had in the past. I'll say that. In regard to subcontractors. Yeah. All right. Any questions on that one? That's the main part. And then the same thing applies to 8.111. If you look over on D, it talks again about E-Verify. And this talks about a little more detail about subcontractors. And so they have to have an affidavit from the subcontractor. The contractor has an affidavit from the subcontractor stating that the subcontractor does not employ, contract with, or subcontract with any unauthorized agent. So basically that's in a nutshell.
ask a question real quick?
Mhm.
Ms. Hires, what do you think about E-Verify as far as personnel?
Well, here's a little bit of background on that. This confirms the employment eligibility of new hires. It's limited to the United States and ensures that our company has legal workforce by electronically confirming the information on their I-9, employment eligibility verification form. We're starting to train in our department to use this. You have to take some courses before you can use it. It electronically compares the information from the I-9 with records available to the Social Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. It is free. And also, people can do a self-check that allows an individual to confirm their own employment eligibility themselves. They can see government records and receive guidance on how they can correct those records. So that's a little bit of background there. It is one more step in our process besides, fingerprinting and taking the drug test, but this is statutes.
This is not going to be an issue within teachers but when we start talking about contractors, it's a whole different situation because it's a whole different employment level of a person who's laying block and building studded walls.
Exactly right. And then to go through this, and then they're gonna up prices, and it's gonna be a delay in building and construction and things that are needed. And it's really taxpayers are gonna have to pay for it. It's bad.
I could just say Parrish is very familiar because this is not, they have other contracts that they have to do the same stuff with.
Yeah, but I don't agree with it, though. I don't agree with it still.
As far as our contractor goes, they're familiar with it, and they'll deal with it, because they have to in other arenas that they're in.
I'll say this, that they were not that alarmed when we talked about it. That he does realize that it could limit us a little, but he's not concerned that it's going to mess the job up or, cause some damage or anything like that. He felt pretty confident we would still have the reputable subcontractors will be okay. So.
Terry, did you have a question?
I was just going to say that I don't want to disrupt anything in this construction project, but the Jessica Lunsford murder was committed by somebody who had seen a child. I think he was a construction worker on the campus where she was a student. They eventually tracked her down and found out where she was, and it was a terrible outcome. So I don't mind if they're construction workers or their backgrounds are run, make sure they're not child molesters or something like that.
Well,
That's not E-Verify though.
No, but it's part of the construction screening process for contractors.
Right, that's actually the next policy, but I'm glad you got us there. 8.20, the next one.
That's different than E-Verify.
Okay.
That's the next one, 8.20, background screening for contractors. I think that fits right into what you were talking about. And it talks about, basically the Florida statute 448.098 or 5, which basically talks about, what we need as far as screening requirements. It also talks about E-Verify again. But the contractor has to make sure that anybody who has contact or could have potential contact with a student has met the requirements of the Jessica Lunsford Act. Background check screenings, it talks about that in number 2 up there. So all that's going to be done. And he understands, we've already talked about that. And, there are ways to mitigate that somewhat. We're going to have, fencing and so forth so that direct contact would be limited at best, so we would have some safe guards in place when we start building construction. So those are the proposed new policies. So all I'm asking for at this point is permission to advertise these new policies. And of course, we will have this on the agenda for the next, I think, 2 board meetings. So that as you read through these, in greater detail and study them. If you have further questions, we can address those in the next couple board meetings. So right now, we're just asking permission to advertise.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, I have a motion and a second. And is there any discussion? Terry?
Going back to the original 3.06, most of the schools are in areas where there's residential areas close by, et cetera, et cetera. At the Chiefland Middle High School, Belmalock Park is right next to the high school stadium, and then the Nature Coast State Trail is right next to Belmalock Park, so I guess you're not supposed to be in those facilities or on those, in those recreational facilities during school hours, is it correct? Because it's a school safety zone. Or is that more flexible than that?
Well, you're not on school property, right?
No, but it says there's a school safety zone that extends out 500 feet from the school boundary. So that would include.
But if a school resource officer asks you to leave, then you would have to leave, but, so possibly, depends on, I guess, what you were doing and, what the, perceived threat might be.
I was just wondering how restricted that is.
David?
The policy addresses loitering in the area. The other issue would be someone not having legitimate business as determined by the SRO. The policy is not intended to restrict commercial activity or to restrict someone who is sort of just passing through or exercising legitimate constitutional rights. But if you're just loitering, that would be an issue. And if you can't demonstrate that you've got a legitimate business.
If somebody stopped at Belmalock to have a little lunch or something, would that be something that would be considered acceptable?
I can't speak for how the sheriff's office is going to interpret this. It's ultimately that's going to be their fault. Based on the factors that are presented.
I think that's the key, is that we've had schools shut down because somebody walked down the street with a BB gun, right? We didn't know what it was. So if the SRO saw you, even though you're right on school property, with a BB gun in close proximity, yeah, you could, I almost guarantee you could be asked to leave, So, I think it just depends on the circumstances.
Any other discussion? I think that we really need to have, start studying these policies again and go through the book, all these changes. That's a lot. And they continue to change constantly, so it's really hard to keep up and stay on top of these. I do have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to advertise.
Okay.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. I'd like to call this board meeting back to order. We'll go to item G, Mr. Bennett, Canvas update.
Madam Chairman, if you don't mind, I'm going to present from back here. So we'll use this screen.
Okay, thank you.
So I am responding for a request that we've had for a couple of board meetings now to have a little bit of a presentation to the board regarding Canvas and what it's like and how things are going. The first thing I'd like to do is kind of go back a little bit into a little bit of the discussion about why we ended up where we did with Canvas, and talk a little bit also about enrollment numbers, because we've received some questions about that. So having said that, what I have here is some updated numbers as of today for all of our schools in terms of the total number of students enrolled in option 1, option 2, and option 3. And what I want to do is I want to draw your attention to 2 or 3 different things in terms. First, if you look at this total enrollment and change from May, down here in the yellow square. What you see here, these numbers represent the number of students that were at, the difference between the number of students that were at each of these schools in May in terms of being enrolled of this year versus now. Okay, so you can see we are down a bit, but not dramatically so. I will next draw your attention, though, to our outstanding DNEs. And just for the audience that may not be familiar with that term, a DNE is a slang term we use for did not enroll. It's a student that we were anticipating had filled out all the paperwork to be at school at one of our schools this year, but has not shown up yet for various reasons. Many times it's because they may have moved and they may not have received school, not received a records request from the receiving school yet. Perhaps the student's out for a medical reason. A variety of different things can cause the D&E. And so it is a normal process during this time of the year for schools, administrations, clerks, guidance to work on trying to resolve those D&Es, to try to figure out where those kids are and correctly either exit them from our system or make sure that they can come into school by whatever means needs to happen. And so one way to think of that is a little bit of a buzz factor, because those students may or may not actually end up in our school still. And what we are experiencing this year, which is the same as what pretty much all districts are experiencing this year, is we're experiencing higher than normal numbers of D&Es. And so one of the reasons for that is, a good example would be, although we started a week late, some of the districts around us, and in particular Alachua, started a week or two after us. And so students that were enrolling in Alachua County, we couldn't get records requests until fairly recently for those students. So it's been a little bit more laborious process than usual to resolve those D&Es, and schools are continuing to work on that. So again, think of that as a fudge factor.
Just for the record, just because a kid don't show up, you can't scratch them. You have to have documentation of where they're at and everything else, because all this stuff factors into your graduation rates and everything else that goes on. So you've got to be able to trace where the kids go.
It is looked at microscopically by our auditors, in particular for our high school students that count for graduation.
So what you see, there's potential if everyone, that 166, if not every one of those 166 is a no-show, that's a loss of 190 FTE.
So the next thing I would point out to you is the green cell at the very bottom, on the bottom row, and that is for home education. Home education students are students that do not count for our district in regards to funding. They are students that have left our district public schools and are taking education with their own hands through their parents if they're minor. And so you can see here that what trend we have seen, and again, this is something that's all other districts are experiencing to certain degrees right now, is that we have seen a significant uptick in the number of students that have moved to home education since May. We've had 63 that moved to home education since May. And the other thing I will point out there is, if you look just to the left of that, look at the total number of students that we have in home education right now as a district. Right now we have 565. That's more than 4 of our schools individually in terms of enrollment. So it is a large and growing pot. And students that, again, go home education are not students that count for us in terms of funding, because we're not teaching.
Quick, Morgan, can I ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Or would you rather me wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. The first question is, as I noticed, so 96 out of our 166 are in the Bronson community. Do we attribute anything on why that trend is so high, or why that number's so high in just the Bronson?
No, where are you seeing
74, I'm sorry, 98. So 74 and
and
the Bronson Elementary. So yes, sir.
Well, Bronson High School or Bronson Elementary?
Well, if you
Just
count
Bronson
both,
area.
if you in the Bronson community, if you count them together, 98.
I understand. So one of the things that we have always noted about the Bronson community in particular is there tends to be a very high mobility rate in the Bronson community compared to our other district schools. And so I think this is very possibly a part of that. Again, another part of it is one of the areas that Bronson schools share the most students with is the Archer and Newberry schools in Alachua County. And so some of these are still students that are trying to track down because of a late start of Alachua County. So there's a variety of factors going on there, and we have talked with them about it, and they are working on it. We as a district have a shared spreadsheet where notes are taken, and Mr. Gore, for Truancy, Mr. Weber, they go out and they help the schools work on these to try to resolve them. And so we review from that spreadsheet.
Okay. And then my second question was, what is our responsibility as a district if on any of these students that are in home education? What do we bear as a responsibility?
We have to ensure that they have an annual evaluation every year. So it's constant, because that number used to be half that. but we have to receive an annual evaluation, and every one of these has to be reviewed. Letters sent out, that it's all the time, and it's a process. Michelle still does a lot of that.
Okay, that was my next follow-up question was.
And sometimes we have to give them letters that, if you don't get it in a certain time, you don't get kicked out.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that answers.
Those
those
two, yes, sir,
questions.
thank you.
So even though we get zero funding for it, we have personnel assigned.
We
to
have
take care of
dollars
it.
that go out to handle that, yes, sir.
And if the evaluation does not meet standards, then what's done?
The evaluation essentially, all it has to do is be an evaluation by a certified teacher, or it can be, they can come in and take our state test. Some choose to do that, or they can come, get a different test, like Iowa Basic Skills Test, whatever it is, some sort of standardized test. Or some of them go to Florida Virtual School, and they'll turn in their records for Florida Virtual School, that kind of stuff. Basically, what we're looking at is the reading and mathematics. But they have to be on a level commensurate with their ability. If it says that, then it is. But if a Florida certified teacher signs off, and that's all I get is I'm a certified teacher and I've signed it, they're on level, that's it.
Gotcha.
And what happens if they don't pass those tests when they come like to our school, our schools and, take the test? And the students don't.
They'll essentially, they get a warning letter. This does not meet it, you have the year to rectify, you're put on probation. So all this is in statute.
Right.
Or they come back to us and then we have the responsibilities to get them caught up
Yes.
to the level.
So then essentially, you can go into homeschool and not do anything for 2 years before we have to get you back in. Because if you don't get it, you're on probation for a year.
Not to belabor this point here, so I know we've talked in years past, and it kind of goes hand in hand in truancy, because I think there's some people that do some wonderful, amazing things with home education.
There's some do a great job.
And then I think there's other people that this is a way for them to hide out. And those kids, they're truly doing a disservice and hurting their kids. Looking at the number here, that number is staggering, so I hate to admit that I didn't realize the number was that high. I knew it was growing.
It's been growing.
So, but did not know it was that high. And looking at that, we're basically the dog chained on the porch. It seems like that's a lot of times what we are as this board sits here. I feel like maybe there needs to be some more conversation with Tallahassee on this issue, to making sure, we know it always goes back to, we want every parent to have a school choice and everything, but maybe there might be something that would see the disservice being done. So, and I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry.
David, do you have a question or comment?
I was just going to say, if a student were to fail a standardized test, it is not difficult to submit a portfolio of work to the certified teacher. You can go to one of the other options. These teachers provide the service online. It's not hard to get that check off.
Right, yeah. I'm speaking of that. Terry, do you have a question?
The 565 students are not, they're in homeschool, you're not being paid this week.
Correct.
That's correct.
So how many students are enrolled now that you know that are enrolled in public school?
In total, I don't know, 5,530.
But how's that compared to last year?
That is, at this moment, it's down 24 students compared to the point where we were at the end of last year. So not a whole lot of change overall. Just remember, we have that issue with the DNEs that we're still trying to solve.
Issue of what?
Of the DNEs, that's what
How's
that
DNEs?
did not enroll.
So we're down 24, but there's 166 missing.
Correct.
Correct.
That we have not accounted for. We were expecting to be back, but have not yet shown them.
156.
166.
166 missing.
And we don't know where they are.
Any other comments?
So then to shift the conversation to the columns relating to the options that you see there. So you may recall back in June, that we as a district did a survey to find out where our parents were at in terms of how they felt about schooling their children in the COVID era, so to speak. And in June, we got a result that approximately 20% of our parents were not comfortable sending their children to a brick and mortar school. We came out with a more thorough survey in July, and that number actually increased a little bit. And what you're seeing now is really that same trend. Our parents have been very consistent with playing out the portion of them that are looking at preferring an option that is not a brick and mortar option. So, for example, if you look at option 2 right now, those are our students that are, we sometimes refer to them as our blended students, or our students that are in our innovative learning environment. Right now, we have 1,132 students district-wide in that option. We have 105 that are full-time virtual. Just for option 3, for comparison, last year we had less than 10 that were virtual. When we started this school year, our number in option 3 looked a lot closer to the number that you see there in option 2, and we had a lot of parents choose to shift to option 2 or even option 1. So our number has gone down dramatically, but again, if you compare last year to this year, even for option 3, that's over a 10-fold increase in the number of students we had. The other thing I'd say about option 3 is you have to remember that from a funding perspective, for our district to receive funding for that student who is an option 3 student, the student must successfully complete the course. Okay.
And how many students in option 3?
105.
105, thank you.
One thing, you're saying option 3 has grown, but you're saying staff size compared to student size, we're down 24 students overall. So you're saying the option grown, okay. I'll make sure.
So then you look at option 2. Option 2, we don't receive funding in the same way. For option 2, because of the executive order that was issued this summer by the state of Florida, Department of Education Commissioner, we basically can count an option 2 student in the same way for funding as we do our regular brick and mortar student or our option 1 students. So one way that I think about this is, you know, our option 2 represents that fairly consistent 20% of our parents that are not comfortable with their students being in school. And what I would say, again, from a funding perspective, is thank goodness that it's there. Because if we didn't, that would be that represents right now 20% of our total student enrollment for students that are in option 2. So just to look at it from a funding perspective in a couple of ways. A base allocation for one student that's fully funded is $4,000. So if you look at that option 2 column, that represents about $4.5 million worth of base student funding. Another way to look at it is it takes approximately 25 students worth of FTE funding to fund a teaching position. So that one column of option 2 represents the funding that's equivalent to about 45 teaching positions.
Morgan, that's pretty fluid, right? Because I keep hearing each week, even though we set that deadline, kids are jumping option 2 to option 1, which I thought, hey, you know what? Good, that would help the teacher. But then I've heard pushback that it's hard for that teacher to teach brick and mortar. And then you get Johnny in the classroom yesterday, who's a couple weeks behind. Realistically, that's what I've been hearing. And so now they're having to teach the brick and mortar and coach Johnny up and have their option 2 kids. So I just know that number's changing pretty.
It is changing, not as much as it was, but it is still changing. I will say a couple things. First, option 3 is closed for this semester because remember, they are funded based on completion. So past a certain point, it is not in our benefit to enroll students because they won't necessarily have time to complete the course.
Well, statutorily, you can't. It's a full-time virtual program. You have windows when you can get in. And so once you're in it, you're ready.
Yeah, I mean 2 to 1.
Right, 2 to 1 is being adjusted, and I believe Melissa's going to participate and help me out here in a few minutes a little bit later. She's going to talk about some of the concerns, and this kind of relates to some of that. But what we're seeing more than anything else right now is we do have some students that are currently not being successful in option 2, and so we're looking at helping them make a choice to move back to option 1. Because again, we're a school system, we're about educating students, and if they're not getting things done in option 2, we want to try to give them an education.
Yeah, and I know you guys tried to make it, myself included, anyone that kind of bounces around, and I get everyone to each their own with health concerns, but it's March to May.
Correct.
It's nothing like what this is gonna be, and I think that's
Correct.
hit hard to some.
I agree. And one of the things that we are trying to do is we're trying to, well, one of the things that you have to consider about all this is that from the perspective of a school administrator, they have a certain number of sections of, say, biology 1, and a certain number of brick and mortar students in that section already. And if they continue to have more students come back from option 2 to option 1, all of a sudden that class, instead of having 20, 25 students, has 30, 35 students in it, then what do you do? So there will be some periods of adjustment. Probably the next big one that we're going to see is going to be right after the end of the first 9 weeks, and a week after the end of the first 9 weeks. Because the end of the first 9 weeks also happens to coincide with our first survey reporting period. So we're getting both of those out of the way, and then there will probably be some adjustments.
Well, they're having, right now, we just got through 3 weeks, so essentially what's happening is a truancy conversation that's going on right now. If you've got kids that are in option 2 that have not logged in and haven't done anything, we're considered a truant. And this option is not being successful for you. We need to find another option, which is option 1. Because if you're not going to go to school there, that's not going to be an option. So those are the conversations that are happening right now.
That's what my concern was, if we go 9 weeks and they do nothing, can we recover them before the end of the year?
I say that's an educational moral thing. Our job is to educate these kids. And again, within our plan that we approved, that went to the state of Florida, this topic is covered in there. If they're not going to be successful in there, they're not going to stay in there.
Well, and we won't wait 9 weeks. We're gonna talk about some things that we're putting out to administrators right now. Matt can speak to it in just a minute also, but we're making those calls right now to basically have parents sign contracts that you agree to this, you're not completing it, so you fix it immediately, or option 1 it is, so.
And we have, what's the rate of the kids that are really not logging in on option 2?
I don't have the specific number because I just had this meeting with my faculty today. We took, we got 149 option 2 students, 6 through 12. So we listed every student, every grade level who is unsuccessful. Whether that's someone haven't logged in 2 weeks, some of them are failing. So those students are going to get a phone call from me starting tomorrow, and they need to come back to school because it's not being successful. So the reason why I like doing it now versus the end of the 9 weeks is we can recover this lost time, even if they have, well, people freshly have 50s, you know, they can make that up, the 50, and still pass this 9 weeks. So that was something very positive for my teachers because the constant reaching out of these students that aren't participating, aren't doing anything is draining. So we can take that off their plate and have those students back on campus.
What about?
Is that 149 for high school and middle school?
Yes, 6 through 12.
This is gonna sound crazy, but I'm a little crazy, that's okay. In just a general explanation, I believe a classroom environment is a better learning environment than being option 2 at home. I know Cameron Asbell was at home clicking around. I'd spend more time watching TV than actually studying. And I would be one of those getting the call, hey, you need to come to school. My question is this, you got these kids that have come to school. They are 3 weeks in, they have done really, really well. They're where they should be. All of a sudden, Hughes Chiefland, for example, got 149, say 70, pop in, boom, Monday. We got 70 that are 3 weeks behind.
Yeah.
What happens with those, not just with those kids, does that slow down these kids that are already up there? And then what about the poor teacher? We got Mrs. Smith who's got her kids over here. We're on fractions, but we got to go back with these kids and we got to start with decimals, if that makes any sense. You know, well, all of a sudden we'd be teaching 2 different things in the classroom because, and it's not, you know, I'm not saying an ESE kid, I'm talking about a kid that doesn't have any learning. He's just behind.
Of course.
A lot of times you can't pull up. A lot of times you pull down. So what happens in that case? I mean, I like the idea. We don't want to wait around 9 weeks because I believe 9 weeks is an impossibility for everybody involved.
Well, just to clarify, when I say the 9 weeks, I mean to make some big changes to master schedules that may have to be made for example, there's several schools that have made already big adjustments to their schedules to help compensate for the number of option 2 students they have, and depending on how many option 2 shift that to option 1, they may have to make some of those adjustments. And when you start doing stuff on that scale, it's easier to do it all at once because you're shifting multiple students and multiple student schedules.
Right.
Teacher preps. To address your question about how do you deal with it, I know, and I think there was just one recently, Melissa, you may know, there's been a lot of work going on what can we do to intervene, to provide intervention to these students in option 2 and option 3, to try to make sure that they're successful. There's been a lot of discussion about that, and not just in our district.
Okay. Well, and a point of reference I make is we had a snafu on information at Bronson Middle High School, where it went out, hey, if you're struggling in option 2 and need some instruction, come to school. Well, we started school on Monday. On Tuesday, all these option 2 kids showed up. And you had 50 kids in the class. Nowhere to sit because you hadn't planned on that, just because of a miscommunication. And parents being parents, like I would do, hey, all right, I'll take you out there, drop you off. It was a madhouse. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about we got to teach 2 different ways. I'm concerned about the load. It's crazy.
We're going to show you some examples a little bit later in the presentation of how some of the teachers are handling that teaching of different things, just so you can get a perspective on how one way to handle it is.
And I don't want to come across not a classroom teacher. I have no idea what happens in the classroom. So that's kind of what I'm asking.
Well, the whole situation, as you can kind of see, is a challenge right now from a lot of different angles. And so it's trying to throw a lot of different needles at once.
It's a perfect storm that just keeps shifting. Like the storm was one thing and then it became something else and then it's been something else. And we're just constantly reeling with the new something else.
But before I move on to more cannabis specific information, one other thing I wanted to talk about in relation to option 2 is, we're at where we're at right now on option 2, and that does seem to be fairly consistent with where we have been, but we also know we have some students that are not being successful. So we just need to be thinking about, if you're that parent that's not comfortable with your child being in school, what are your options? If someone calls you and says, your child's not being successful, you need to come to school. One of the options is home education, which we don't get funded for. It's another option, so it's just a very delicate conversation. It's a personal kid by kid conversation where you're trying to find the best fit for the student. And I agree with some members of the board that said that, there's a lot to be said for in-person instruction. But it's just a challenge when you're going kid by kid with different circumstances.
It's just such a balancing act to me, because at what point are teachers just going to say, enough? I mean, I've asked to do this, and now I'm 4 weeks in, and these kids, like Cameron said, like kids are coming in. I talked to a teacher today, these kids that are coming back in, they're 4 weeks behind. They've done nothing. So the kids that actually showed up and the teacher that showed up, but then you don't want, that's a large number.
Say half of that number.
Yeah, what are we going to do with those kids?
Home education. Half of that number.
So that's another hat, like funding. You have to put that hat on, and then you have to balance teachers and children.
Well, what I did notice, you did this, in option 2 say 45 jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and probably more if you factor in the aids associated with helping those. So, and also remind me, but we pretty much were mandated to come up with multiple options by the state to be held harmless in October.
Mark, we were asked to submit a plan.
We didn't have to do option 2 there, I don't think.
No, we don't option 3.
I have actually had some conversations with other NEPAC districts. They're a little bit smaller than us, the ones that I've had conversations with, but there's a few that chose not to do an option 2. And the one that I spoke with just recently, just as an example, what they're seeing is, even though they're about half the size of us, they already have more than double the number of students in virtual. And again, the state has made no guarantee about anything being different for how those virtual students are funded. So if those 200 plus students that particular district has, if they don't complete, that's
if we hadn't done option 2, our option 3 would be, virtual homeschool would be through the roof. So I had to, y'all schooled me on that when we first talked about it, because I was not for option 2.
If they're not successful,
That was
It was a money
the option
game.
2 was a
It was a money
huge conversation about the funding. We don't want to lose a single employee. And had we not had that
One other thing about option 3, your FTE for virtual is not at the same level
Right.
as FTE for ground work.
So
Right.
It's about 80%.
about 80%, and you don't get that unless they successfully complete.
Right.
If I go through it the whole time and get an F, I didn't successfully complete.
Right.
What's a success? A D or better? Pass?
Pass.
Pass?
I won't say this, this sounds like very uneducated, I've been listening, but I think as long as we focus on what's best for the student's education, it will work out for us financially.
That's all we're trying to do.
That's why, I mean, I know, I just make sure, because this conversation went a lot of different directions, but I think those 1,132 were in the classroom last year. So, I mean, we're not gonna get them all, because I know there's still fear of the COVID, I understand it, but
Well, I'm personally hopeful that if the COVID situation continues to improve in our local area, you know, I think some more parents will become comfortable with their students in the day, at least compared to more schools. I think they agree generally with what we believe, which is the school's the best place for their kids to be.
There are some of that 132 that are really successful.
so I agree.
One last comment I'd make on this slide is that bear in mind that any changes in funding that we would experience as a district based on the kind of movements that you're seeing here, that is completely separate from the proration that Mrs. Blake was speaking about. It's kind of a double threat right now. And it's a scary environment that comes with that.
When's our FTE count?
It starts the Friday of September 25th, and date certain is October 9th. So we're about 2 weeks out from the start of the event.
I know we're making some changes, with our policy and certainly with Matt, the school and Colin and everything. But with taking attendance and everything, and a lot of these students haven't logged on and everything. So, like Mr. Lott said, we all take attendance and the teachers do. Why hasn't that been pushed, even sooner with these kids not logging on?
Oh, I think it has been. I think it's just been a challenge because of the volume. I have every confidence that our schools have been reaching out and trying to get these students contacted and encouraging them. And it's just, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
Line.
And the feedback that I'm receiving is that the teachers are doing all that they can, and they are reaching out and they're going back and forth, but it's a real struggle because of the time and the attention and, both programs and, and the Canvas, which, there's positive and negatives and everything. And I'm glad we're having a presentation on it, but it is a real struggle for them on this.
There's no doubt, Chairman, that everyone in the field of public education
Right.
has been challenged.
They have.
Not been challenged in a very long time.
Yeah, they have. I've been reading articles on all the other counties too. So everyone is challenged, with this. And I don't think it's, the Canvas actually that, that's the problem. It's just the going back and forth and the option 1 and option 2 on that I would really like to focus on too as well.
I don't know how to keep it straight.
I don't know that they can. It's hard.
I'm sitting here looking at and I guess it's because I'm from there, but in Bronson Middle High School, we were kind of close in these numbers of how many is option 1, how many is option 2. And if I was a math teacher having to toggle back and forth between those two, I don't know how you keep it straight and how you stay on top of it with planning, with all that stuff. So I admire everybody that's doing it. I don't know how you do it.
I think
it's outside my skill set.
We're
Is that going to be addressed?
It is.
I'm jumping ahead.
From teachers.
I'm jumping ahead. I'm asking questions about what's coming up in the movie,
I'll have
right?
us talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, so enrollment numbers. The next thing I want to talk about is just a quick recap of specifically Canvas and how this is rolled out. So again, because of all the situation with COVID, we had to be on a very aggressive timeline with this from the beginning. So we actually didn't start implementation in terms of integration even of Canvas until around mid-July. And so by late July, we had 4 days of training for a Canvas lead team of teachers that were experienced with technology, comfortable with technology. And then they helped facilitate 2 days of whole staff training at each school. And so every teacher that was willing to come was able to get 2 days of full-time training on campus before school started. Then the board chose to delay the start of our school year by 5 days, so that provided teachers an additional 5 days of planning. During that time, we were able to provide some additional training on how to be an effective blended and virtual teacher, both at the elementary level and at the secondary level for teachers that chose to attend. And so that's where we're at as of mid-August. So things have been progressing so quickly, it's easy to lose track of how quickly things happen. So we're talking really right now, we're within about a month and a half of starting to use Canvas at all. And so it is perfectly normal for teachers and others that are using it to be experiencing those initial growing pains, to have trouble logging in. Everyone involved is still very new to all of this. And normally, in a normal situation, something like Canvas would be an implementation that takes place over the course of a year or more. So that is one of the things that we and other districts that have adopted a system like this have been dealing with is that timeline. So what we wanted to do next is we wanted to share with you some input from teachers, and we're going to start with a video from kindergarten teacher, because that's one of the grade levels that is really probably newest to this type of learning. And this teacher, we're going to skip around a little bit to a couple different pieces of the video, but she's going to talk a little bit about what her experience is like for doing Canvas as a teacher.
Can I ask you a question before you start that? Because I will forget, because it's a training question. You said it was volunteer to come to that. The ones that chose to come.
We strongly encouraged, and we did.
Did we have a good turnout?
We did. I don't remember you, Melissa. I think it was like 70 or 80%, I think, of our staff.
Yeah. And now going forward, do we still have training going on?
We have another, she's going to talk about it. We have another day of training from Canvas that we have in reserve. And then in addition to that, she's going to talk about some other things that we're going to do to help provide support.
I just wanted to ask that before we got away from training. I'm sorry. Am I stealing your thunder? I'm sorry. I'm used to Paige stealing mine.
Hi everyone, my name is Eric Grimes, and I'm a kindergarten teacher here at Joyce Bullitt, and I volunteer to be the blended teacher this year. So I'm going to show you how we are using Canvas for blended students in kindergarten at our school, and walk you through what it looks like from the teacher perspective as well as the student perspective, and parents too, because kindergarten babies need their parents' help. So to reiterate again, I am kindergarten, so I've made my Canvas as user kid-friendly as I could come up with. So it may look different from what you may have already seen at the secondary level. So again, please keep that in mind. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk through what this looks like. So from the teacher view, my dashboard, I have my courses. So when I'm working in my homeroom, obviously I go to homeroom. And I have my home page. So up at the top, I have announcements, and I also use Remind to let parents know there's an announcement on Canvas, please go check it out. And these are videos. That feature is really nice because it's different from using Remind, where it's just a text. This, you can make tutorial videos, and sometimes it's just nice to get announcements face to face, even if it's virtual. So that's where that's where the announcements show up. And after I go through the teacher perspective, I'll put it in student view so you can see exactly what my students are seeing. This is my home page. So every now and then I'll change out the Bitmoji to do something fun. But I have my days of the week buttons, and this is where I link all of the work for that day. So I have to make pages. So just to start, and this is kind of student view, but to start, these are the pages. I have them labeled Monday through Friday, but every page looks the same. A for each one of these subjects every single day. So in order to do that, I make a page. So I go through all pages, and now that we're in week 4, it's become a little bit easier because I can reuse pages that I've already created and just switch out some of the materials and videos or screenshots that I have. So these are all of the pages that I created or that my kindergarten team has helped create too. So it puts it in alphabetical order, comprehension. Right now we're in week 4. So for comprehension, week 4, Thursday, that's tomorrow. All I did was I clicked on Wednesday. And, oh, wait, no, I didn't. Hold on, let me take that back. All right, so while we're here.
I'm gonna pause there and skip ahead for just a moment to the next section.
I emailed the full
Yes.
18-minute video to you.
No, I can't ask. Student View.
Now she's gonna talk about.
Studio has been pretty awesome. When we went to distance learning in March, I was recording everything on Zoom and then uploading it to YouTube and then sending out YouTube links through Remind to my families. So this is actually pretty awesome. At the beginning, it was really overwhelming and a lot of people were, oh, I can't do this. But after a week or 2 of playing around in it and learning all of the features, it's actually been really beneficial. And I feel like myself, as a blended teacher, I would be prepared if school shut down. But I also feel like my team would be prepared as well. So Studio is pretty awesome because you can categorize everything together. So every time I do something for comprehension, I go to my comprehension and add a new video or Haggerty. Sight words, it's just nice and really organized, which has helped a lot. I don't have to search around for everything. I know exactly where it is. It's easy to find. Let's see. So I'm going to go back to the course now and put it in student view so you can see what my students are seeing and their families. So I'm going to do student view. Okay. So it became hard to get through this all as the teacher perspective too, but it's a little more, I feel like it's very parent and kid friendly. So recent announcements, there they are. Like I said, I sent out a reminder, check it, make sure you watch the video, you know what's coming up, you know what's going on. So to do, those are all the announcements that we've had. And there's the home page, fun little Bitmoji, our days of the week. I'll come back to that. So for blended, we have to have the PE course, and we pulled in from Florida Virtual School. So they have the Florida Virtual School on their dashboard when they sign into Canvas. But I've also linked, I put all of that into my homeroom page as well, and I've linked those modules to this button. So they don't have to go back and forth between dashboards, courses in their dashboard. They can just click on that physical education and it goes there. Then this is a button for Meet the Teacher, a little bit about myself. Frequently asked questions. I tell my parents, if you forget a password for something, if you have a question, go here because everything might already be listed. So everything for frequently asked questions are in there. And all they have to do is they can just go back home. Click the home button. And scroll back down a little bit more. Here at the bottom, so I have also made week buttons. So since I have those course buttons, the Monday through Friday, I also wanted my families to be able to have access to past modules in case they needed it, in case they needed a video from week 2 of numbers 0 through 5. Or if we want to reference back to a story, say go to week 2 and listen to the story again, just trying to make it work smarter, not harder. So they have access to everything. So like right now we're in week 4, but if they wanted to access any of the assignments or videos from week 3, all they would have to do is click on week 3.
Pause there. You get that concept. We're going to go to one last section where I believe she talks about the student view, right?
She's gonna talk about, just her feedback as a teacher.
Oh,
her
yes.
group of teachers.
And submit a short video there. So I'm going to see if I can take my camera off of share screen. All right, so like I was saying before, Canvas has been really beneficial, and even though it was extremely overwhelming at first, trying to learn something brand new in such a short period of time, now that I've had the time and I've created things and I've made videos and I'm actually in here using it every single day, I've even had to get some blue light blockers because I feel like all I do is stare at the computer screen now. But it has been really great, and I think that we are ahead of the game should school shut down again. Students are familiar with it. They would know what to do at home. They see their teachers' Canvas classroom every single day. They've also seen other teachers that they would normally see. So even if we don't shut down again, there are students in classrooms across the campus that get to see Ms. Dola do Coyote lessons that they would never see before. Or they get to see Ms. Grimes do a writing lesson over in Ms. Thompson's class, and so on and so forth. I really hope this has been beneficial in kind of understanding and seeing both sides of the fence, kid and parent view versus teacher view. Overall, super easy once you get a hang of it. Just kind of time consuming, which I'll take the time consuming and easy over quick and difficult. So thank you for your time, and I hope this has helped you guys. Bye.
Oh, she did a great job with that. So that was a kindergarten perspective. I did want to give you just a real quick snapshot. She did such a good job of explaining. I think she covered most of the highlights that the person would ask for any level. But I did want to give you a quick snapshot of a little bit about what a secondary course might look like in this kind of a setting. So I actually wanted to highlight some work that one of our teachers from Chiefland, Ms. Valerie Perez, has been doing. And this is her U.S. history class. So this is her homepage for her high school level course. And you can see she's like Mrs. Grimes. She's included a lot of basic information on the homepage, navigation tips. And then what she has done is she has centered pretty much all of the work for her course under the modules. And so when you go to the modules, what she has done is she's always keeping the most current module at the top of the stack for her students and their parents. So that's industry and immigration topic 2. That's what they're working on right now. And you can go backwards, back to topic 1, then topic 0, and then she has some newer ones that haven't hit yet underneath that. But just to give you an example of a couple different experiences that might be what a student sees, if you go here to Civil War, let me get here. We're going to do the Gettysburg quiz. And so she's given directions here, and she's included the actual text of the Gettysburg Address, and then there's a video that students watch as part of it. I could make them larger if I wanted to. Idea of big this. This is an example of her linking external content into a lesson.
The Civil War was fought in 10,000 places, at Big Bend, Big Sandy, and the Big Sunflower River. From Bunker Hill, West Virginia, Blue Springs, Tennessee, Cairo, Illinois, to Golgotha Church, Georgia, and Christiansburg, Kentucky. At Citrus Point on the Cimarron River, and along Cowskin Bottom. At Pedley Run and La Glorieta Pass, and Gettysburg.
I think if I had my choice, all of Mormons.
All's there. And then you can preview, we're going to preview the actual quiz. So you can see that there's some questions here that she built within the system for students to answer based on the text of that very famous speech, and also the information that was provided in that video, so a couple different sources. You know, it started out sort of basic, what happened 7 years ago, what's happening at the time of Lincoln's speech. But then you get down to some of the ones at the end, and then you get into a question like, what is the purpose of starting the third paragraph with a but? Or to consecrate means to make or declare something sacred. Why can those gathered at Lincoln's speech not consecrate the battlefield? So the questions are getting progressively more challenging. And when they're finished, they'll submit it. She'll be able to grade it through Canvas and provide feedback. Okay. Next, we're going to go back.
So Morgan, can all the students access that on their Chromebooks, or are they all being able to get the YouTube?
Yes, yes. And she's going to talk a little bit to that because that is a concern that we have heard. And we sent out some clarification actually earlier today on that based on the communication that we had sent out earlier in regards to how they can get access to what they need to through YouTube. Like Ms. Grimes was saying, they also have the built-in tool. If they're just videotaping themselves for a lesson in class, they can use the built-in tool in Canvas, and Ms. Grimes indicated she liked that better than YouTube. So it just depends on what they need, but there is a way for them to get access. We can talk about that more when that comes up in a second. And the next thing I wanted to show you was she actually included here. She's included a DBQ regarding reconstruction. So in this one, she actually linked to an external document that she had developed. We're going to open up. DBQ, by the way, stands for discussion-based question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
and mostly online, those are implemented to make sure that the student can explain to the teacher in a communicative way, whether it's through Zoom or whatever, so that you know the student's doing the work and someone else isn't doing the work.
So in this case, she's brought together a couple documents. And then there's some questions here that the student has to answer. And so you can see, you know, one of the things with the FSA standard is multiple documents and comparing and evaluating multiple pieces of text or information at once. So that's an example of that they would then respond to. And the last thing I want to show you with her is how she is dealing with that option 1 versus option 2 issue. So if we go back down here to topic 0, we're going to click on Edgenuity. And so let's look at what she says here. Edgenuity work is now added to supplement in-class work and lectures. Assignments will be counted as classwork and quizzes as quiz grades. This is to be completed for students on option 2 or home during any extended time. Civil War and Reconstruction is available at this time. More work will be added as we move to a new unit. So this is a link the student would follow and be able to do those things that she set up in the Edgenuity system. And so you can see here, this is a good example of a teacher who's differentiating work. It's still essentially the same stuff. You know, we're working on the same kind of topics we were looking at, Civil War, Reconstruction, and she's just differentiated a little bit in the way that teachers are used to doing sometimes within a class for students that have different needs, for option 1 and option 2 students based on their setting. So that was an example of this, how this particular teacher had.
So this is what she does for her option 2 student.
Yeah, they'll do a lot of the same stuff you saw before, but her students that are in class are also receiving lectures or other information and activities with her there in the class. And the students that are in option 2 are doing this work in lieu of that. Does that make sense? So the things that are in Canvas, everyone will be doing more or less. The stuff that's being done in person in class will be replaced with what you see here from Edgenuity for those students that are in option 2.
Now, does Canvas have the ability, and I always ask about these children, like children that have accommodations, like talk to text, does it have that ability?
We have about 3 or 4 different tools for that. So Edgenuity has some capacity for that. We also have some extensions up here. If you find the right one.
They'll do it in different languages.
Yeah.
Does she have the ability, like some kids have a, you know, send home, you gotta do these 20 questions, but these children have an accommodation for
So we
that.
have,
Can
we
it
have an
differentiate
extension for
that?
that they can use. We have some stuff built into Canvas, and also Google itself has some accessibility tools they can use. So there's a variety of different tools that are out there to help students like that.
Now, my last question, I'll leave you alone on this, like on the one where, and I asked this, I'll tell you this to ask this question. Recently did homework with my own child, and the teacher went ahead and sent a message home, said, it's gonna mark you wrong. It's going to tell you you're wrong. You may be 100% right, but it's going to tell you you're wrong. I'm going to have to physically grade the quiz, but it's gonna tell you it's wrong. And when you got it, you know, at first I was like, how can it possibly do that? And it had to be, you had to do it precisely the way she had entered it. Now, this leads to my question, like in here, where she was wanting, like the communicative answer. You know, I may tell you one way we're going to go to Gainesville, Brad may tell you a different way, but we're both right. Will it do that? Or does she have to physically go in and go, okay, that's not exactly what was written to be the answer, but yeah, Billy, you got it right. Does that make sense?
It does, and there's a couple different points I think I would make in response. One is Canvas does have a wide variety of ways that students can respond to a quiz or an assessment, up to and including even video submissions. Like you could have, if you're an elementary age student that needs to do a fluency reading, you could videotape yourself using your Chromebook, doing a fluency reading, and then submit that video to your teacher to review and grade. So there are different options in that regard. The second point I would make is that quizzes and assessments, and you're going to see this when Ms. Lewis shares some survey results. That's one of the areas that our teachers right now are saying they need a little bit more professional development in. So I think that's one of the areas that they're still kind of on the bleeding edge, so to speak, of what they're learning about Canvas. And we're going to be working to try to provide them some additional support for that. So that may, depending on what's going on there, that may be part of that situation.
Well, and I appreciate the teacher going ahead and saying, hey, it's going to mark you wrong.
Yeah. Well, she's creatively finding ways.
And say, we'll fix it, just ignore the score you get. I know it's going to tell you you're wrong, but you're not wrong.
So
I'm a naturally advanced person, so I'm asking questions even before I'm
That's
ready.
all we had in terms of sharing what teachers have, but I believe that we have some more information we'd like to share with you.
I'll try and be quiet the rest of the day.
Good, it's a good conversation. So I did want to take a quick mention about integrations, because this is a big topic when it comes to Canvas. Canvas is a very wide-ranging system, and it can integrate with a lot of different things. Every integration is different. They work in different ways. They have different rules. They provide different benefits and services to the teacher and students. So what we have done is we have a very long list, both in the elementary and secondary level, of things that our teachers and administrators have indicated they would like us to work towards integrating. And we've asked them to prioritize them, and we're trying to work down that list by priority as much as we can. So these are some examples of things that we have already successfully integrated. Of course, we've integrated Skyward, which means teachers can do grading in Canvas and then pass those grades back to Skyward Gradebook, so they don't have to put them in two places. Now, some teachers are choosing to just continue to grade in Skyward itself, and that's fine too. It's just an option that's available for those that want it.
So it has been syncing consistently to Skyward?
The way we roll that out is I asked each school to have one person contact me and us sync together for the first time. I think either all or almost all the schools have done that at this point. And so we worked through with that first person in each school how to do the sync. And then we just ask that person to then show the next person. And so with the next person, it kind of easy chain it down the line like that. Gradebook syncing is a complex thing because there's a lot of aspects to grading and setting up assignments. And so we're still in that process of learning what all the different quirks of that syncing system are. And we do have occasional help tickets on that we try to work through. I have 2 or 3 right now that we're trying to figure out what's going on. But we have shown that if we follow the directions and keep it basic, that pass tag does work. Does that answer your question? Google we connected with so that teachers and students both have access to their Google Drive and the Google Apps to provide assignments or to provide assignment submissions. Achieve 3000 is an intervention tool that's used at the secondary level. Mastery Connect is going to be a tool that's used for assessment as we move through the school year. Progress monitoring will be done through that. And Edulastic, actually, I'm not as familiar with Edulastic. I can't remember off the top of my head what it does.
Assessment piece, I think.
Is an assessment. And there are others that are coming, that I just wanted to share that. And now Melissa's going to take over and talk to you a little bit about some survey work that she's done.
So all of that is the beauty of it. That's what it can be, with the, the efforts and the knowledge as teachers learn more about it. But the real life of it is there are concerns. There are issues that the teachers are having, there are issues that parents and students are having. So we wanted to capture that as much as we could through putting out some surveys to our parents and students and to our teachers and administrators. So what this next part is a collection of the highlights from those. We currently have, from this parents and students, we had over 600 responses to the survey. From the teachers, there have been 144 responses. So we've got a good amount of people that have been adding to that. And the point of the surveys also was to two things. One, from the staff's perspective, to capture the teachers on the campuses that have been lifesavers. So we wanted to know so that we could, one, thank them for their efforts to help others, but for it also for people to kind of rise up to know, like, who are the knowledgeable people that are able to impart what they have learned to help others. And then from our parents and students, we asked them which classes are the ones that you are finding to be the most successful in and to be the most easily navigated. Because we wanted to see, we don't know it unless we are a parent ourselves. We don't know it from that side to be able to say, oh, I might be a very successful teacher and I know all what I'm doing in campus, but it might not be good at all on the student side of it because it's hard to navigate or the to-do list is not accurate. So we wanted to capture names of teachers that parents and students were feeling like were ones to maybe help other teachers model after. So this slide shows the issues that have come from our teachers and administrators. So one, we know that we need more training, and we do have more coming through Canvas. We also have multiple collaboration documents that are out for teachers, and those are updated as new information comes about. So, for example, yesterday, one of the things that comes up in the list in a few minutes is how to connect a Mastery Connect assessment into Canvas. It's a high percentage of something that teachers wanted to learn more about. Yesterday, that answer came from Mastery Connect, and so what we were able to do is take that list of steps for teachers to follow from Mastery Connect themselves, put it out in the collaboration document, and we emailed all the collaborators on the document. So basically, it pushes it out to every teacher who is in that that realm. So if it's only elementary are getting it. If it's secondary, it goes to them. That's just one example. YouTube video approvals causes teachers delays. We heard that a lot. So in order to kind of combat that, what we have learned is when you're trying to put in an incident IQ to get a YouTube video approved, that takes time. You got to figure out how to do the incident IQ. This is coming from someone who struggles with that. And then two, there's only a small number of people who are in that to address incident IQs. So for each school, there is a YouTube approval email group that has been created. It includes the administrators, the tech on the campus, and those people, administrators can request to have anyone else on their campus be added to that group. So basically, a teacher wants to add, something from, I don't know, ABC Mouse or whatever. They submit it to this email group. So it would be JBES YouTube approval. Once you start typing it in, it's going to pop up. You put the request in and what website that you want, and there's a lot more people now that can approve your YouTube link than was previously. And then once that link is approved once, it's approved across the entire district. So there's more people who can now make approvals, which make that process much faster.
and if you don't mind, just give you back a little bit more detail off of that. So YouTube is a platform. It's very quirky in how its security is set up. It's not like a lot of other things. And there is actually a completely unblocked version of YouTube. There is a lot of very inappropriate content that's out there. And so we have to, like other DFED districts, have to put it in restricted mode. And then only things that are approved for children are open by default, and other things have to go through this approval process. We saw this issue brewing back in early August, so we actually set all this up back in early August. And I think what happened, we may not have realized it until we got the survey results, is a lot of people weren't realizing and hadn't gotten that message that they can just use that email group. And so we resent out all that information again today. So anybody that needs it, we can set it up.
If you talk to somebody today, they probably don't know about it yet, but the resolution is coming for them for that to be much faster.
Okay.
And that's the thing we were appreciative of the surveys. There's a lot of, there may be a lot of issues, but because they're calling the wrong people to talk about the issue isn't getting resolved quickly. And so the survey, what it did was we keep seeing YouTube. So then we know that we've got a problem and we've got to address it. Once we know it, we can fix it, hopefully most of the time, but that was an easy one to fix. Another one is issues with importing some curriculum content. So what we learned with that is, for example, Reading Street in elementary was our approved curriculum, but it's been so many years that we've had it that now we don't have the online access to the content. So where teachers are using Reading Street in their classroom, they don't have the accessibility to link that into their Canvas. So it's examples like that have prevented some curriculums. Do you have any other examples of that?
Well, we have had several instances where it's just a matter of the online content has not been purchased, but those are typically purchases. Many times they're purchases at the school level, based on schoolhouse textbook budget, and that can sometimes cause the problems. We have had some issues, and I will call it out because it has been a challenge with materials from Houghton Mifflin Clarkboard, and they have 2 or 3 different platforms in ClassLink, and a lot of a good portion of our online content is from there, and we've had rostering issues with them. And what we've been able to confirm so far about those issues is that they, as a company, are receiving all the rostering information that they need for us. They confirm that for us. What they're experiencing is a problem in programming on their end. And so that we have a ticket that's been with them for a while. Let's keep escalating. It's up to level 3 now. And so they're still trying to work with their programmers to resolve why some of these things aren't resolving. And so that's kind of a picture of how some of those problems sometimes play out. We often have to contact tech support for the actual textbook manufacturer, it's a textbook material, and work with them through that process because every single one is different. And like I said, Houghton Mifflin has 3 different platforms just within ClassLink.
Another one that you'll see also on the parent-student list is that you must have due dates set to add to the student to-do list. So on the student screen on the right-hand side, if a teacher sets due dates, then they pop up on the left to be completed. The issue is kids pass the due date, don't turn it in, so then they're knocking on the teacher's door to open the due date back up. Or if the teacher doesn't set a due date at all, then it doesn't come up on their to-do list, so they don't know to do it. So we're needing some consistent responses on school campuses of how we're going to set due dates and how we're going to respond to students not meeting due dates. Because I think we were going through a grace period of everybody getting used to the program, but in my opinion, we're at the point now that we know what the expectation is. The due date is this, which is in the future. You've got this many days to complete it. You might get grace on one time, and I'll open up for you one time, but now you've got to know that the deadline is the deadline. And we're causing more work on teachers because we're continuing to have to reopen assignments. That's just my opinion from a couple of situations that have happened, but I think the grace at some point needs to run shorter so that it's not all this workload on our teachers. Another one is navigating option 1 and 2. We've been talking about that, and or quarantine students. Students following directions and timelines for submitting work. I just addressed that. And then courses that do not have curriculum to support it, such as Edgenuity and Florida Virtual. So Edgenuity and Florida Virtual doesn't cover everything. So some of our teachers are having to put together more work because they don't have something to pull from. So
It's particularly a challenge for our secondary CE teachers.
So they're having to be curriculum writers as well.
Yeah, well, they're having to adjust.
Find a way to upload the curriculum that they have. Yeah.
Many of them have existing content. It's just going through that process of figuring out how to make it work in a digital environment.
That's what I've heard mostly from teachers complaining that it's, or not complaining, just trying to figure out how to learn how to code.
Well, and that's what I wanted to say, from a teacher perspective, you could have had a problem with every single one of those bullets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's overwhelming.
Right.
Because, you know, you might have only had one or two, but some of them might have had all of them.
Right. Yeah.
And you just want to rip your hair out.
Or editing one
Yeah.
thing and losing everything.
Yes.
I've heard that a lot
Yes.
too, so.
And so, because Canvas is new to everyone, sometimes we don't know the resolution of why, whenever you do something, everything was gone, you know, and now 2 weeks of your work has now disappeared and I can't figure out why.
Right.
And that's just, I mean, I don't want to say it's just as frustrating to us, because it's not the same whenever you're the one who lost 2 weeks of work. But when you can't help someone figure out where 2 weeks of work just went, that, you know, and then you have multiple people that you know, can't help solve something, that's frustrating. I guess I just want to, it's frustrating on their side too, to not be able to resolve something.
Yeah, that's why I think it's a good idea to have the extra training day for sure, because I feel like.
Well, and I feel like at this point, like somebody could take Sarah's, from Canvas, could take Sarah's video, because she's got some things that I feel like she's doing that could be done a little differently, that might be more efficient for her. And a Canvas person could probably watch her video for 18 minutes and say, oh no, you need to do it this like this, and it'll be so much easier for you. Which is where we're going to get to in a minute, that with Canvas Cadre, we want to select our strongest teachers that have shown to have the most success with building their courses, and let them watch each other, because even within the group of the best, you might look at that and show each other what they're doing and realize that, oh my gosh, if I'd have known that, like I need to do it that way. And I think there's just like, everybody's managed to do the best that they could, and the best that they could has spread amongst their school. And then you've got the best that this school could do, and then the best that this school could do. And so you've got a bunch of different methods.
Yeah.
And then even within schools, you know, there's different ways to do due dates. And so then that becomes the parent list. Are you on the next one? So issues reported for parents and students. One, parents and students need more training. Inconsistency of how teachers use Canvas, such as the to-do list. Major differences in how courses are set up and navigated. Using one form of communication. So Sarah alluded to using Remind, but she also is one teacher with one grade level, where at a secondary school, one teacher may be using Remind, one teacher may be using the messaging within Canvas, one may be saying email me. So there's all these different methods, and it's causing a lot of confusion on the parent side and student side. Option 1, students having to do work in Canvas. So in the survey comments that came up several times of Option 1 parents didn't realize that their kid was going to have to be doing all this work in Canvas too. But really and truly, the point of that is, 1, they know how to do it if they go home, but 2, we can't expect teachers to plan for this and then plan for this different thing. So there has to be a compromise in that, you know, for the benefit of our teachers. And then submitting assignments can be confusing. I don't fully understand that, but I know that there's a way to submit and there's a way to upload, and if you do it 2 different ways, it can do different things. So.
And I think they're being, kids are, if you follow a kid during a day, during one of these days, the time we're in, you have one teacher like that that's rocking and rolling with it, Canvas all day long, one that's still using Google Classroom, one that's not using Canvas at all, one that's asking them to upload an app and take a picture on their phone, save it as a PDF, and send it in. So for these kids, that to me is why we need the training for the teachers to all be on the same page, because if you follow a kid, especially secondary, it's a lot on them right now too.
So in response to that, what I can say, 2 things have happened in the last 2 days. Williston Middle High School had their WOW nights. If you're familiar with that, the staff comes together and they do some rotation. So what they were doing, the survey just went out yesterday, but yesterday we already had like 400 or 500 responses. So I went ahead and shared it with Josh. We sorted it by school. Each administrator can look across. One, they can see if it was a parent or student that said it, and then they can see the teachers that have successful courses according to the parent or student, and then they can see the areas to improve or areas of strength. So what they can do now is they can see what are some common things that we're seeing across our school that we need to fix. And so I think that will be our next area of growth. Bronson Middle High School had an option 2 parent night tonight. Jennifer just messaged me and said that 40 parents came to that tonight to get help on how to use Canvas. So, like I said earlier, the storm changes a little bit each time, but right now we're in the middle of the storm that we've got to, you only have so much time. So what do you do with your time? So at this point, it's informing our parents of how to help their kids be successful. And so I feel like that's what our schools are kind of planning to attack right now.
And I think she's gonna get into it a little bit, but we've seen some of the most success, the schools that have the greatest amount of collaboration seem to do better. And since you have elementary schools that have multiple grade level teachers working together, they've done a better job. Whereas you have like a high school might have a single algebra 2 teacher, they don't have a buddy or somebody else to work with. So that teacher has to create everything themselves. So the secondary rollout has been more difficult. And elementary rollout, that's some of the things we're trying to address too.
Which gets back to what you said, Melissa, the last meeting, how important it is district-wide for us to all be on the same page within the county.
Right.
Well, and I think that's probably the most growth that we have, and I'm just learning that in our secondary world is, getting our Algebra 1 teachers, or if you're just talking about our math teachers, like, how can we divvy up the assignments that we have before us? Like, who can work on Algebra 1, who can do, this course, so that we can spread the work out instead of one person having to do 7 preps. Right. Because that's what's happening at elementary. They would have 7 preps if they tried to work on their own. But if they collaborate amongst each other, you take phonemic awareness, you take fluency, you take comprehension, and so they're breaking up the work. But then within the district, that same thing can happen. We put out which she was doing YouTube, I don't know if she's moved to Studio, because Studio really is much easier. But let's push out all the kindergarten Heggerty videos across the whole district. Why should any more than one person have to do it? It's all the same thing. So, yeah, that's cool.
So, Ms. Melissa, not to interrupt you there because you're on a roll. So, who's with we'll say the curriculum side or instruction side? Are you the point of contact for that, or is that Morgan?
I think everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Addressing it in different ways. It's bigger than 1 or 2 people.
Well, and I guess that's it's kind of a broad question. Like, if it kind of gets more narrowed down, like, to whatever the problem is, and different people, I feel like it kind of depends on what their issue is, if they call Morgan or they call me.
Okay.
And then we kind of might shoot
We
back
kind
at
of just know
him.
what our different strengths and skill sets are. So I'll call her if I have a question about something, or she'll call me.
And then we don't know it all. Like, we only know what we've had to tackle, and from the more of the administrative side of it, where a lot of times we reach out to teacher leaders, and Heather Rollins has been a really big help as far as from the teacher side. She's kind of trained herself because she was doing best standards whenever we were doing Canvas, but she's pushed into schools and helped some of our smaller schools that only have 1 or 2 people on a grade level, and trying to help support them. So
We start has helped a lot with
That's right.
our virtual teachers. She has some experience in that kind of area. So
I guess it depends.
All right. I've got some more questions, but I'll
Okay.
let you keep going.
You want the
Conquer Canvas survey results.
All right, so this slide shows what areas of Canvas do you need more training? Actually, no, going back at one.
This is what you know.
Yeah, what have you conquered in Canvas? I had to open up the actual slide because some of them are not labeled. So what our teachers are kind of showing from the survey results that they know how to do are the basics of it. And generally, if you know the basics, you can function fine. I think what it is once your neighbors start to learn above the basics, and then you want to be on the same, on the same level, that's when it kind of starts to get stressful. But creating modules they're comfortable with, publishing and unpublishing modules, changing the cover photo for your course. So these are the things that have stood out to be things that they feel successful at. If you go to the next slide, what areas of Canvas do you need more training? So this is the one that we want to focus on when we pull Canvas in, or when we're looking out for teachers that are showing great success in their building of courses. how can we get those on our Canvas cadre to push out information across the district to get everybody on the same page from that first survey question. So the biggest one is using Studio, which is what you saw Sarah do a minute ago, how to video yourself and how to post those. That was the one that was requested the most. The next
What was that
one
on that prior screen that was only like 2%? What is that? What is that? Changing?
Those at the bottom are
It's that
2%.
That one there. 2.8%. What is that?
Changing what students can see on the notifications.
2.7, integrating a Mastery Connect assessment. Some of them aren't labeled, so I can't see what you
And that was what you actually pushed out some information on.
Yes,
So what was it?
integrating
A Mastery Connect
a
assessment.
Mastery Connect assessment.
That doesn't say that up there.
Right. Some of them, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, aren't labeled there. That's why I opened up the actual form so I could see the.
So what is our plan to address that? I mean, all the rest of them are on up. That one is failure.
It is failure, and that's the one that I mentioned a minute ago, that we reached out to Mastery Connect because that's one of the integrations in Canvas, and they gave us a specific, like a 2-page document that has snapshots of what a teacher needs to do in order to integrate a Mastery Connect assessment.
Okay.
So basically, that one is like, check.
We had actually done the work of the actual integration with Mastery Connect a few weeks ago, and we just.
Didn't know what to do with it. We
Okay.
got the connection, but we don't know how to pull the assessment from Mastery.
So I am your worst possible teacher. I don't have a clue. How are you going to teach me how to do it? Are you just going to send me some memo and say, this is how you're going to do it?
Well, in the collaboration document, we did upload the directions, but then at that point, it would kind of be at the school level of, if you couldn't follow the directions on the 2-page document with screenshots and things, then you would need to reach out to a person on your team who would deal with it.
And on that collaboration document that you're speaking about, there's one for elementary and one for secondary. When you add something, you're identifying who you are. So if you've got a clarification question, you can post it and resend it, or you can contact that person directly. We had some questions about that from a post a while back on attendance, and I was able to see it and post a response and send it back out to everybody. So not just that person, but everybody that's shared in that document can see it.
Yeah. We had a situation today, and she emailed me, she's like, I'm scared to post on the collaboration document. I'm like, but that's the point of it.
Yeah.
She had a problem. It was posting assignment twice. And I said, no, I want your name to be on there because it's always neat. You know, like, so she got brave, posted the question, and so basically it alerted everybody. Is anybody else having this problem? Have you already resolved it? Nobody responded, so Heather jumped on it today, worked up a solution. They were trying to see if it was going to be the exact fix before they post the response. But basically, it's a problem-solving document for everybody, but it never goes away. So, and everything's highlighted, so if you're looking for a certain topic, you can scan down the document and look at the highlighted pieces to find your issue.
Well, I think people are becoming more comfortable with that, but a lot of times, even grown-ups, I think, are a lot like kids.
Yeah.
Kids don't want to admit, like when you're sitting here, I'll say this about myself. I've said this thing and it looks like everybody else is getting it and I ain't getting it. And I don't want to be the one to go, hey, so to put it up there on the forum, that takes a big step, especially when you're a well-educated person that is expected. I mean, that's why I'm saying, kind of jumping in on Chris's thing. Who, and people are still much more comfortable with this, who do I call and go, I don't get it?
Right.
And Sally, the thing has tried to explain to you how to.
Well, I'll go back to the initial training setup that we did. Remember, the very first step of training that we did was we trained Canvas lead teachers for every school. So every school has 1 or 2 or 3 Canvas lead teachers that are also a resource that someone can walk over to their room and say, can you just help me with that? And I will say on my end, that's helped me because those Canvas lead teachers are often the ones that are fielding the more challenging questions to me because they're getting them from their colleagues, and it's helped me develop some relationships and work on problem solving by having that point of contact. Like I know, for example, I can call Cindy Putnam or she can call me from Bronxville High School because she was one of their lead teachers, and we can have a conversation. I got that off it.
I don't want y'all to think I'm beating y'all up on this and beating this horse. I'm just trying to grasp how this works.
Well, and that's why we wanted to. We didn't want this to come across that we were painting this like this is a beautiful picture. We know there's a lot of issues, it's a huge program and we are like 7 weeks into it in something that should have been a year, but we didn't have a year to do. So, I guess just being real about that.
Sorry to blow you up.
No, you're okay.
We're on the, what thing we're doing?
So go on to that list basically is what we're gonna use to get the Canvas cadre to work together so that we can conquer the things that everyone still wants more PD on. The next slide, bar graph. This one.
Did you say 144 teachers responded?
So far, yes,
Out of 350?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, 350.
It's only been a day, right?
The teacher one went out a couple days ago. The teacher, parent and staff went out yesterday, so after 2 days. And it's still collecting, so, and I had initially said, that it would be open until Friday, so we'll definitely have updated information too. How would you rate your level of success using Canvas to support your students? It's like the perfect bell curve. But we've got 46% at a level 3 that feel like they're at a level 3 of supporting students, 26% level 4, and 10% are saying strongly. So we've got 46% that don't feel highly successful. And so no names were attached to this, but it does let us know that we've got, a good bit that still need a lot of support to feel better about their work, because nobody wants to come to work and feel like you're a 1 or 2 certain kids. And then the next slide. My team has a plan that is supporting me to move towards success. So this one I was proud of, because the percentage that we have that at least they feel like something is going on in their school campus that's going to help them get there. You might not be there yet. You still need maybe a 1 or 2 in how you feel, but that's a good percentage that feel like they're moving in the right direction. But the 28% that don't feel like we have a good plan, that's where we've got to figure out where that's at. Is it a school? And I feel like this survey isn't broken down by school, but the actual results, we can sort by school, and so we can kind of get some averages to feel like, is there a certain school that's standing out? We haven't done that yet because it's not closed yet, so. And then the next slide, option 2 and 3 completion concerns. We talked about this really earlier. So what's happening right now is we have an option 2 letter and an option 3 letter. They're very similar. There's just a little bit of wording that's different based on the option. But it basically says you agreed to work daily, work weekly. You agreed to keep on pace. You agreed to log in daily for attendance. You're not doing that. So this is your warning. And you're basically signing a contract that if you don't step it up, then we're going to have to move back to option 1. And then yesterday, we actually created a document to support our administrators that once you've given that warning, the effort was not improved. That's the little screenshot of the picture here, but basically administrators can get approval from Mr. Edison to move them to option 1. Any questions on that? So our plans moving forward, initially it was the parent-student survey, but we already have that in place. Canvas cadre, administrators are submitting names now in order to offer teachers to be on that cadre. We're going to be using successful practices to support all our teachers from that group and focus on developing a consistent experience for students and parents. So addressing some of these ways of work even within a school so that it's a consistent experience for the students and parents. YouTube approval has already been addressed, so we just got to watch that and make sure that our staff really know how to submit that request. We do want to offer more parent support hours like Bronson Middle High School did tonight, so we want to offer that across our district. And then schools considering school-wide expectations where they might have thought that they were putting out some consistent things, but now we need to kind of really nail them down to make sure practices are consistent across at least the campus. Questions?
Thank you guys for being so transparent. I mean, at first with the video, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be all unicorns.
Yes, and rainbows, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's thunderstorms.
And the survey.
It's a little rain.
Yeah, I agree. Please don't be insulted by this. Too many times, all we hear is the unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
It's good to hear about the thunderstorms, the reality of that, because to me, that lets the people out there, and I like that it's available to people, that they can see this, they can hear this, that they realize up here in the ivory tower, you're not oblivious to the struggles. That's good. I think that's good. Earlier you said you get like the 5 best at it at the schools to teach those 5. I'm assuming that means let's give them a little bit more training. Those 5 would then go out, teach more at the school, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
The illusion.
And what I would say is that the Canvas cadre completely hasn't been nailed down as to what that's going to look like. There might be some offerings for some of our most struggling teachers to get some direct contact too. It might just not be the strongest ones helping, everybody. It might be that we bring in some that are like, I'm struggling and I need some specific help, and maybe we pull those in too.
Right.
So
I was
the
concerned
process
about you, kind of like with our kids, we celebrate our top 5, don't forget the bottom 5.
Well, and, could we put the survey out and say, ring the bell of who you're aggravated with? Sure, but that wasn't going to serve any purpose. What we wanted to do is who is showing success that others could model after, so then it wasn't offensive to anybody.
Oh, we have, without the CARES Act, about $70,000 that was not used for the initial training. So that's what we're talking about, Canvas, cadres working together, and especially with the secondary areas where they can get together and work together so that they're not as on the same island like themselves.
But I think you brought up a good point, our unit, in elementary, they have the team.
Right.
But when you're in secondary, you may have one algebra teacher's having to do it all, and she doesn't have a buddy, or he doesn't have a buddy.
Right.
And so I think maybe if there's a way for the Chiefland one and the Williston one and the Bronson one to all be buddies, not have to create this wheel every time we have to do it, I think it's a great idea. And a Cedar Key one and Yankee.
And there was some of that in some of our subject areas where you had, teachers from more than one community.
Yeah.
So multiple communities getting together, working on the work, and so to speak, for the campus and things like that. So I guess one of the things that I see and looking and going back to looking at our numbers, and this was a question that kind of popped in my mind, is how many kids do we know how many kids we may have that are in option 2 that are then coming back and playing sports?
I know they're out there, so I don't have an exact number, but it's definitely been reported to me that they are out there.
Okay. And so I guess, and this is a thing, and this probably won't be a popular thought with them. So, but if you're not able to come on campus for your brick and mortar education, then how are you able to come on campus for some type of sport practice or some type of game or some type of club activity? Obviously, we know, but these are some things that go along with being a brick and mortar student, I feel. The other thing, what I really struggle with, a couple things. Number one, I'm extremely concerned with how many students may have some type, and I know that there's different levels of IEPs and things like that, but IEPs, but also maybe our lower level learners and those kids being out there in that option 2, and just, and so I'm very appreciative of that. I'm thankful that we're reaching out to those, because I think the sooner that we can transition those students back into the classroom, because I just can't imagine, and maybe this is me with my knowledge as I sit here and I think of what Mr. Asbill said of sitting at home and being at home and having this screen in front of me and losing out on that, maybe that one-on-one time with that teacher that it finally flips the switch that that's what we've been working on all week long. I finally understand the concept of what I need to be successful.
Yeah, every one of us had that one teacher that got us.
Right.
Missing that isn't.
And so, and then kind of leads me into the, you know, so I'm glad and I'm very appreciative of the work Morgan and Melissa and going through and getting this information there. So, but I know that we have a lot of teachers that are teachers that we've celebrated that are great teachers they're struggling. And I know we talk about grace and compassion, but they are, I mean, as the phrasing that was used to me, they're drowning in the mire, and making sure that our administrators, just as we're reaching out to parents, that we're reaching back out to those teachers to give them the support. And I'm thankful because I seeing this right here, we know it's not perfect, but there's definitely a lot of support that's flowing from the district back there, and as much of that as we can. And I'm glad to hear that Heather Rawlings is helpful. I think that's something also, because the last thing is making sure that we've got teachers that are trying to toggle back and forth. We talk about those option 1, option 2 kids and how difficult that is. And once again, these are teachers that have been bright shining stars for our district. So to make sure to reach out to them, to give them the support that they need because I think, you know, sometimes we're our worst critic and we're the hardest on ourselves. And I think that's one of the things that you've got some people that are out there that have been amazing teachers for us that just need a little bit more support to get us through this point. So, and the sooner that we can get some of those option 2 kids back on campus, I think the better off that we will be with that process. And it seems like we have some pockets of success in some communities where they've really planned to have opportunities where you have teachers that may have a period free to do the blended and where they're being able to reach out and those type of things. So seeing what's been successful in those communities to kind of duplicate it. So that wow thing that Mr. Slump does is a wonderful thing. I know he did it in Cedar Key and got to see that. So last thing, will you talk about CAMI? So
yes, CAMI is a software program that is online. I know a little bit about it. So what I know is basically it takes a PDF that when you just open a PDF, you can't do anything to it. And so what teachers were having to do is like basically at home, they have to print it, write on it, take a picture, upload it, send it back. But CAMI makes a PDF magical. Teachers can add text boxes to it. They can interact back and forth, like writing notes, giving feedback to the teacher or to the student, and click submit, and it basically sends it back and forth between the teacher and the student. So we heard an outcry basically from schools across the district of wanting CAMI. We reached out to the Lee County Schools Foundation to provide it for us, and we've been waiting on a quote. We finally got the quote today. It was very large, but it sounds like it's something that our teachers really want. So with the quote that we received, we wanted to put it out to our schools to make sure, is it worth this to you? We just want to, you know, make sure that we're spending the money that's been granted to us so nicely. And if it is, then it's a matter of putting in a purchase order, and it's an immediate response of having, I think, even more access. Right now, the teachers they're working on like a free account. But with the quote that came to me today, there's a lot of different options of things that CAMI can do. I don't know project right now. So that's a huge thanks to the foundation.
And I'm gonna give you a parent aspect on CAMI because it was one that they tried out, and I have a child with learning struggles who, and I can just speak for my child. I may be the only parent in the entire county that feels good. I was not overly impressed. Now, to use it in my business would be great, but with my student who has learning issues, who has dyslexia, who has all these issues, when you get in there marking up his page and you have to toggle from this thing to read it over here, to come over here to put your answer in CAMI, to do these multi-steps, it just created mass confusion on his. And so I asked some other students, other parents who did not have children with those issues. They were kind of the same way. One of the assignments was draw a line under these certain words. Well, that's all well and good if I could do that with a pen, but to do it with my finger on a Chromebook mouse, that line goes all over the place, and pretty soon you have to do it about 5 times to get it halfway correct, even when you blow it up. So there were some struggles there that I, depending on how big that number is.
And I'm not discounting that because there is some feedback on the parent-student survey about Cami. So we wanted to share all that information. So I'm glad that you spoke up. It could very well, and I'm not saying that it is, be just like Canvas. Someone picks the hard way to do it or to put it out. There may be a clearer way that would prevent what your experience has been. I'm not saying that is the solution, but it could be. So
and I'm saying, yes, there could be a better way than what we're seeing.
So, but I do want to entertain the pros and the cons of it to figure out, is it worth the sum of money that they put in?
I think Canvas is really, it's a great program. I don't think Canvas is a problem, and I really appreciate you sharing the pros and the cons and getting it all out there. And I admire those teachers, the programs that they're doing a fabulous job. But I do know that it is taking them a long time. And I don't think it's the Canvas program, the platform at all. I think it's the option 1 and 2, and the number of teachers that are having to do 1 and 2 and having to go back before and between. I like the idea, that Matt's going to call and we're going to get these students in. And I feel that's exactly what we need to do and exactly what we need to put in our board policies and make sure that happens. But I do think that we as a district and as a school board, that we voted on this 1 and 2, and that we actually created the problem that, that our teachers are frustrated and that we're having. So, we really need to be accountable. We need to look into this and we need to continue looking in this. So I want to stay up to date on really what's happening and the true issues, like you said, and you put out there, and that's great. But this is serious, and I had mentioned that to Mr. Edison too. I believe it's so serious that we need to follow up. We need to continue. We need to do, please, if it's through emails, if it's through whatever feedback that we need from our schools. I talk to Matt a lot, and the things that they're struggling, but we need to stay on top of this and be accountable for it.
What would happen if we try to transition it this semester out of just go to brick and mortar? And
there's actually some districts that are announcing plans like that. We have, as you saw earlier, we have a very large portion of our current student enrollment that is option 2. So like I was saying before, we need to be cognizant of all the implications of that kind of move and make sure we're doing it gracefully. Right. That's a good way to say it. But yeah, we have seen that out there as a discussion point.
I'm anxious to see with our conversations with our administrators, with those students that basically aren't doing anything. So, and working on transitioning back them where they're in front of a classroom and a teacher with a teacher. So.
Can I add?
Yes.
I just see with that large number that have to be contacted, and the workload administrators have on them now. I don't know if there's aides that can be pulled, if there's district staff that can be pulled, somebody to help with this situation, because it looks like to me the number one problem, I've heard it multiple times, that where students are not responding at all, but I know with the workload the teachers have right now on both of them, if we try to push that back on them where they're already trying to contact, and then we turn and put all that on the administrators at the same time. I think my opinion would be that I need to be a multi-person from the district level all the way down to help with that situation. Yeah, I'm sure y'all probably already on top of that. But
we are, and in fact, an example of that is it's definitely a hands-on deck situation. And for example, option 3 is also going through this process because there are a few students in option 3 that also were not being successful. And so this week, Mr. Stark has been calling and reaching out to those and notifying some of those, and we're cutting off. We've got to come back to a situation where we can actually get some education accomplished. So,
add to that, all those D&Es we're trying to find. Yeah. We've got Dennis and Adam knocking on doors, just trying to find kids.
Yeah, there's so many issues at the table that, yeah, just the number of people to try to conquer all of it and just about the time that you're hoping that the numbers are gonna settle, so that we can start making a plan to respond to the ones and the twos at the same time. The new issue now is bringing people, forcing more back because they're not being successful, so again, your numbers aren't settled, so.
And then you're gonna have an extra schedule application.
But let's always remember, we know how to do brick and mortar. That's what we've always done. So the revert back, even though challenged, we still do know how to do that.
And Matt, how many do we have at Chiefland Middle High School doing both the 1 and 2 options?
There's 149 option 2, and then there's 793 total students.
But how many teachers are doing both?
I'm sorry. Most all of my teachers, and the reason being, I don't have an individual blended person because I don't have, I'm running 32, 33 kids in a lot of classes, so I can't remove a teaching unit just to be responsible for that. But on the flip side of that, when I bring all these kids back, they're already counted as being in their classrooms, so I'm not gonna have to change schedules really and kind of mess up my master schedule. So on the flip side of that, that is gonna be a little helpful for us.
So
That'd
you
be
just
great.
said that, I don't understand. You 32 or 33, that's counting 1 and 2 in a classroom.
In a classroom, but there's some classrooms like, biology, I'm running 33, but those are all 33 kids that are in there and there's no blended kids in there. So, I'm comparing, because out of the 149 kids, I only have I think in that 10th grade total, there's 20 kids or so, and some of those might not even be in biology, so it's kind of how we did that. Just didn't have the teaching units available to designate an individual teacher to do that for us.
So if they came back, it would be an easier transition. You have that ready.
Yes.
Well, that's wonderful news. Thank you. And I think Terry had a question.
I've been trying to figure out blended, but I originally, way back when, I thought you were talking about kids would come 1 day to classes and 4 days they'd be at home. But it sounds like there's a different mix of things. Is that how they're doing it now? Is it 1 or 2 days in class and 3 days?
Not at our school. They're teachers communicating through Canvas. Now, if the student has an issue, they can come in and meet with the teacher, but they're not coming on Canvas 1 or 2 days a week.
Awesome.
It was initially
It evolved.
named blended because it was a blended model, just like you explained, maybe 4 days off, maybe come to school once, but then the governor went back on what he said and said that the in-person part could be done through a video conferencing of some sort, as long as there was teacher
But there are
contact.
kids that come on campus.
Some schools are choosing to request their option to students do attend. Some have certain, a certain day or a certain time because they feel they need that support on that day. So the model varies a little bit, but it's still an option if it's needed.
I have a question. If I'm at your school and I'm teaching biology and I have 33 kids on my roster, some of them are option 1 and some are option 2. When do I have the time to call those option 2 kids that are not doing their work, or have that time where I'm going to work with them if I'm working all day long?
What the teachers, not only just the biology teacher, but any of them, either if they're doing it during planning or the few minutes after they're, choosing to do that, if they choose to do that. But they're making contacts with, but what we're looking at is the contacts that the teacher's making, that there's no response from that kid. They've been contacting them for a couple weeks, they can't get a hold of them, they won't be responding, so that's a lot.
Right, but I've got Cameron that hasn't turned anything in a week. That's gone. I've got to do something with Cameron because that's the teacher, and I've got to take care of that.
So they give those names to us, and then we've got records of where we've been reaching out, trying to contact as well.
So if I have blended students on my face-to-face roster, I'm not really doing anything with those children.
You read that in?
So if I have blended children on my roster, I'm not really doing any teaching or any paperwork or anything to keep up with those
Well,
children.
they've got them on the Canvas, because they're teaching Canvas with the regular students, option 1 students. So those kids are getting the same thing that those option 1 kids are getting on the Canvas model platform.
But no extra time built in their schedules, no extra planning period, no comp time, no additional class, anything for those
There's
teachers.
no additional thing here.
Ms. Carson's obviously talked to some of my former teachers. You know how I was.
I do think, we've addressed a lot of different problems and issues, and just, if we can just keep this on our agenda and just keep us all update and do everything we can to support our teachers through all this, because and everyone, because it is challenging for everyone. Are there any other comments or anything, or any other questions?
Thank you both.
Okay, Canvas update, item H, Care Here update.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for waiting.
Sure. So I sent you my talking points ahead of time, but I wanted to kind of give you a situation that's been developing. When we opened our care center in 2014, when we decided to go self-insured, we opened our care center under Care Here and Crown. They were in partnership together. Last year, the two companies dissolved their partnership. All of Florida was kept with Care Here. Well, we have an option now to decide whether we want to stay with Care Here or move to Crown. And this has come up because about 3 weeks ago, I was contacted by another district that was with Care Here and told that Care Here was selling. Was being told and wanted to know if I had been contacted. I had not. Of course, it was the middle of COVID and everything else, so I just kind of waited. Never contacted, which I feel is not very good business. So in the process, I checked with our brokers. Our brokers had not been informed. On August 28th, the morning of August 28th, I received an email from Care Here. It was a mass email that they had a big announcement to make and wanted us all to join. It was like a 2-hour window of time. And so I started a webinar on my way to Williston to deal with the case there. And so that's when they told us they were moving to Premise Health, which is a large conglomerate wellness center business. So anyway, at this point, I still have not heard directly from Care Here. It's only been webinar or from other districts. Little disappointed in the communication. Recently, Citrus County, who we modeled our plan after, has moved to Crown because of similar issues. And I also learned that several other districts and other clients of Care Here have moved to Crown because of similar districts. I have a monthly webinar, usually meeting in person, but since COVID is a webinar. Earlier this week, it was not brought up again. And then I learned that when the medical assistant is leaving and they've already advertised the position and interviewing, I think that information is worthy having ahead of time. The other issue is when Crown and Care Here dissolve their partnership, the staff at the center would stay, which is a big issue because our people become familiar with the doctors and the nurses, and the medical assistant and the nurse have been there from the beginning. They've not become friends, but they know them. They're very familiar with them. It is very unclear if we continue with Care Here, which would move to Premise, if the staff would stay. And that is the big deal with me. If we go to Crown, the staff stays. So would like a recommendation from, I would like to know what the board would like to do.
Are the services?
Services are the same, fees would stay the same, everything would stay the same.
What kind of history do you have with Crown or Premise, or did you look them up? Because I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I just did not look those either.
Crown, I have because we dealt with them from the beginning anyway. Really, when we started with Care Here and Crown, I dealt more with Crown because Brian, and you may have seen Brian here before, he's he's president of Crown, so I'm very familiar with Brian. Premise, I have no experience whatsoever with them.
And did you look up anything about their company?
Yeah, I mean, they're large. They handle large clients, like not so much in Florida, but that's where they're coming into. I think Disney might have some of them, or they might have Disney as a client.
So they're big companies.
Yes, yes.
Well, I think, this is my opinion, I think Care Here owed it to us to give us a courtesy contact. Hey, this is coming, we're doing this. They didn't do that. That tells me what they think of me. That's how I feel. Further, Now, me personally, I don't care who checks this out to make sure I'm healthy. But a lot of people get comfortable with their doctor or with their nurse. Like, for example, I will say this at care here right now. Jennifer, I'm very comfortable with Jennifer. I joke with Jennifer. Jennifer doesn't make fun of me being fat. She's real kind when she takes my blood every 6 months. I like that. That means a lot to me, but more importantly, we have a developed relationship with Crown from years. The fees are going to be the same. We know the personnel is going to stay the same. Our neighboring counties are going with Crown. Exactly the one that we followed into this little venture is going with Crown. But the big thing, I mean, I don't call it a selling point, but the big elephant in the room, the big slap in the face is you didn't contact me. I mean, I'm going to use me as an example. Some people have insurance with me. They would not like it if I didn't call up and go, hey, I'm selling out my agency to somebody else.
That's right.
I feel like that is owed to your client.
And I agree. I know we're small. I get that. But
I know I'm
like,
not Disney World.
Right. But I feel like we were at least owed the courtesy. It's not like we came on 2 months ago.
Somebody gets a pretty good commission off of this joint.
Right.
That phone call, and a phone call takes 1 minute.
Right. I agree.
Just go, Kaylee, wait, look, this is what's happening.
Right.
That. So I move, we go with Crown.
And I'll tell you on the contract with Care Here, it is, all we have to do is we give them a 90-day notice.
I move, we go with Crown.
Did you have any questions?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions?
I'm using strictly 100% your professional opinion here, and I agree with you 100%. I don't understand a lot about it, so it's kind of a quick decision for me, but I'm totally going, and on your professional opinion.
That was another thing I should have offered. I trust whatever.
I do.
I recommend, I mean, I feel comfortable moving to somebody I know. If I didn't know them, I would say we need to do something different, but I feel completely comfortable recommending to you that that's what we do. I don't feel comfortable moving to a company that I have no experience. The other part where there were other counties that we have, like Citrus County and other counties that we've modeled our plan after, we sought insight when we started this, have moved. So that's a telling point to me. It's not something they just did overnight either.
And there's people at Crown that we've worked with before.
Yes.
So.
And I trust.
President of the company has come here.
Yes, and I trust him.
Talk to him.
If he told me, listen.
And you know what? You're going to get a phone call from Care Here now.
Probably, but that's okay. Well, they will when I send them a certified letter.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. So
Yeah,
we got a
that's when-
second. I
We
second.
have a motion and a second. All those in favor to go with Crown?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
I had that phone call. I remember when we first did this.
All right.
Across the blue shield.
Are there any changes in our minutes? Okay, if you've read the minutes of the August 25th, right here, a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to approve that. Consent agenda, are there any changes? Okay, no changes. I will start with Brad.
Real quick, I appreciate Bronson graduating a student and sending them to the University of Florida to send them over to Williston to be a science teacher.
Well, actually, she's covered the whole county. She came from Bronson with a chief
And that's right.
and came to go.
Right, she just ended in the right spot. But I do appreciate that, Mr. Asbell, but that's all.
Okay, thank you. No questions, Cameron?
I will jump on that.
Okay,
And here's why. If y'all will look at this, I want to bring this up, okay? If we look here, you see number 10 and number 11, Joshua Benj, Kaylee Robinson. I think it's fantastic. And I'm old enough, it seems like just yesterday. Well, that one kid, it was not last year, but a year or two back. He graduated high school at Bronson, and Callie graduated from Chiefland. I just think it's cool when we hire our own people. And these are in two totally different jobs. We have a fantastic young lady who's going to be a fantastic teacher. We have a fantastic young man that Breezy's going to mentor, and a career has begun there. Both these kids have started a career right here. And now I'll go ahead and tell y'all, I will not be here. Marla Hires may be here, but I won't be here. But these two kids right here may one day get 35-year pins. Oh, that'd be cool.
yep, that's right.
we'll be in our wheelchairs and say, I was there, that happened. So, anyway, I think stuff like that is so cool. And those two right there, two completely different career paths with the Levy County students. Homegrown, like an old fellow told me one time before, and I've said it before, homegrown tomatoes are the best tomatoes. I think it's cool to see homegrown kids starting careers. School board Levy County.
I agree. Thank you. Chris?
Only thing, I'll echo those comments, so that, I wish the two of them best of luck, and glad we've got people that are homegrown here. And then I'll just call your attention to CI, the dual enrollment articulation agreement between the school board and Florida Gateway College. So what a wonderful thing, another avenue for students to go and be successful in a program that is desperately going to need people in the next few years. So wastewater treatment in the state of Florida. So appreciate our district staff and appreciate that articulation agreement for the students to be able to be involved in that. So wonderful thing that kids can go and make a great living. So.
And that is the first year we've done that with the gate. Yeah.
This has just started, yes.
That's great. That's
We articulated with the University of Florida that had to go back around us with Gateway. And there's a backstory to how this all came to the point.
I'm sure.
The story one day.
okay.
Pretty interesting.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. And then I don't have any agenda questions on that. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Mr. Edison.
Just to, one of the things, I mean, this is the COVID time of year, and I'm certainly glad we're getting back to some normalcy with some football games and such, but also with football games and such comes with other things that we have to have some concerns about our activities. And John and I met with our secondary principals about homecoming. John, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, just trying to figure out what we can do safely in regard to things like parades and gatherings for floats, creation of floats and things like that. So we tried to come together with some ideas about some things that the kids can do, but do some things safely. So as a group, they determined that they don't want to do the parade, which is something that, is a traditional thing we've had. We pointed to things like, for example, Williston didn't do their traditional July parade, and actually there's been more cases now than there was in July. And also there's a time constraint as far as permits and things like that. So they did talk about those things at the school where the kids could probably do some floats. And but then instead of doing the parade, display them at the game, so they can still have a competition. They can still have some create the float. It's going to be a full-blown parade. It's just some things like decorating doors and having competitions within the school as far as decorating doors and things like that. So scaled down versions of what we might traditionally have seen for homecoming. As far as the actual homecoming game, obviously you probably know the Florida High School Athletic Association has reduced the amount of time at halftime, so that I think it's 12 minutes now. And so what we've done traditionally, maybe at halftime itself, and cannot be done. So we've tried to work some plans out to do the majority of that stuff before the game, pre-game, and then maybe just do an announcement of King and Queen at halftime without the walking out and all the pageantry that goes along with that. So some modifications that that we've come up with, and Matt, you were there. I mean, I don't, at least something else. I can't remember everything we talked about.
I don't think so. I think we're gonna kind of do that pregame thing, announcing King and Queen, or introducing them, and we'll announce the King and Prince pregame, because there'll be a lot of football players on there. And then at halftime, we'll just announce the Queen and Princess and ride around the tracks.
And we did talk about powwow for you, and we're not going to say it's flight night or in, just in, and I think at Wilson, it's just called the pep rally. But, not do that as well because of the trying to make sure everybody's social distancing and stuff like that. Instead, do things during the school day, at school, like at lunch and things like that, still try to maintain that spirit. So it'll look different, but it'll be safer for sure.
I got several calls on that today, and I told people I would ask about this. Some from Williston, some from Cheatham, some from Bronson. And this is the question asked. If we can all go to the football game following social distance guidelines and all the rules and all that, and the kids can be in school together all day doing whatever they're doing, why can't we follow those same guidelines for powder puff games, for powwows,
Parade.
for all that? I understand. I honestly, I can get the parade because, yeah, that's out of our control.
Parade is spread out.
But we're outside. You got 600 students that are inside together all day. I went to a football game Friday. There was a lot more people at that than there's ever been at flight night. I don't know about the powwow. It gets a pretty good turnout. The pep rally, I'm sure it gets a good turnout. I kind of agree with the parents that called me. If we can do all this, why can't we still have that? Because, and I will, as a parent of seniors, I'll throw this in here. Last year it was, man, these poor 2020 kids, they're losing everything. Well, the 2021 kids are losing everything too, except that they get to go wear a mask all day at school and be told, don't get too close to each other. So I understand where the parents are coming from.
It wasn't something that we mandated. It was something that every secondary principal together came up with the plan. And I don't know, Ms. Wade, you deal with investigations pretty much every day that we're having. So
when you're on a school campus and you have a case, it's not, I wouldn't say easy, but it's easy to do a contact tracing investigation because we can get out there and measure and things like that. You know, with the parade, we're trying to social distance within a classroom as much as we can. We're spreading desks out, we're doing what we can. If you get 50 football players on a float, there is no way to social distance on the float.
Right, and I said, I'm perfectly fine with the parade. I understand that. I'm talking about your powwows, your flight nights, your powder puff game, when you got 100 kids have shown up to see this thing.
Well, we did talk about powder puff in particular, and we did say that that would probably be something that we could reschedule at a different time when maybe COVID was not such an imminent threat to school.
Okay.
So maybe that's something that the schools can do later.
And I would also say, you might want to go revisit that, saying the principals decided, because some principals are saying the district decided that. And so
you were there.
I was there.
and I figure it's a collaborative effort. I'm just saying, you may want to go back and say, hey, boys.
And I'll say this too, when we were having that meeting, I think the day before us, we sent home 70 kids. So, I mean, that's where my mind was at, because like we were talking about powwow, in our auditorium, the chairs are like this, and we'll pack that thing out it's impossible to spread people out and, do it in that type of.
See, and again, that's an indoor activity.
But please tell me which principal said that, because I would like to know.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk.
It's not my school, and I'm not the one that does it.
I did not put my 2 cents in, I love them.
So I'll just share that there's always basketball season, which is what Cedar Key does. So I know that would not be, but if you pushed homecoming down, so you could, so do something like that, so.
And in Bronson, we don't have air conditioning. Everybody knows that COVID doesn't travel where you don't have air conditioning. You're 100% safe in Bronson.
All right, I just think it's sad not to have the parade, which is outside and spread out. We could make modifications for maybe separate some kids on a float, move them out, move that distance out. But I do understand now the tracking, and that would be hard. But it is a shame that last year they had to take things away, and then this year we're going out direction, but just, could you consider moving it, you know, a different time so they do get to have a parade, or, you know, some other way that we could work it out so they do have it?
What we're hoping is that later on in the year, at different times, we'll do something. Whether it's a powwow or a parade or.
I hope so.
Power Puff or something else, but.
I hope so, Cleveland Middle High School principal.
I would hope that later on.
So that's a school-based decision, what you're saying?
School-based decision.
We all came
We're
together.
trying to get together.
So it's a district decision.
Well, we're trying to get them together. Well, Chiefland did this, but Williston can't do that.
Well, I'm
So
saying,
that's
so
why
is it
we
a
got
school
three
decision
principals
or a district?
together, for them to sit down and collaborate and for them to make that decision.
And so they came up with, this is what they came up with together. And, you know, Wilson, one of their concerns was the timing, because their homecoming was the first one.
28%.
So, that was, you know, one of their concerns in
It's
regards
just a question, I
to
just
the
asked.
parade, you know.
I don't agree with any of it. I got a senior in high school, and the fear factor between everybody's all different. I don't agree with any of it. But so, I mean, if we're giving opinions, I've given mine. I don't agree with any of it. I think we ought to have homecoming parade. I think we ought to have powder puff. I think we ought to have it all. So if we're giving opinions, that's my opinion. I have a senior in high school, and our fear level of it's a lot different. So that's just ours. And we have a big old huge street called Noble Avenue, and you can stay 40 foot apart on Noble
That's right.
Avenue if you want to do that. So there's a will and a way. I just get feared when we start canceling things, then next year it'd be just as easy that we don't carry that tradition once we kill the
That's right.
tradition. And so it's just my opinion.
Yeah, we didn't do that last year, nobody missed it.
Right.
That's right.
So, but I
agree.
do understand that some do have fear, but you don't come to parade if you have fear. Just my opinion.
Thank you, Brett.
Yes, ma'am. And we can do 4 trailers of football players and put them
That's
6
right.
foot apart on pavements.
That's right.
There's, what I'm saying, there's a way if that's what we want to do, and the same with cheerleaders. And we'll help make that happen if it's so be. I'm done. I tried to be quiet, but I couldn't do it.
We appreciate you. Thank you very much, Brett. I agree with you. Any more comments?
Just one other thing,
Is it good news?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, I wasn't gonna take my copy if it wasn't good. Just let you know.
One of the things that we've been trying to do is whether this is for our virtual kids or for DPVs, is just on campus or whatever like that. As you know, internet accessibility is an issue. And so we've got what we call access points and cradle points. And what is it you want to talk about what this is?
Sure, so.
And what those two things are, because they probably don't know what the access is.
Sure, so as we have discussed in previous meetings, we all are aware that internet access is a challenge for many of our families. So we have been trying to work on that. And we've been very lucky to have a couple of wonderful partners that partner with the school system in the form of grants or donations to help us try to get internet out to some of these people that most struggle with it. So we have a couple of different things that are out there. One is that, and this was the one that actually happened first, we partnered with the Lee County Schools Foundation to purchase some less man wireless access points. And we have been working on identifying locations for those wireless access points where we can station the bus for 8 to 8 a day at a time, several days a week, and provide some internet access through that to some of our students that live on farther outlying areas from our core communities. And so one of the things I believe that Mr. Edison shared with you was a schedule that we're going to probably be announcing to the public tomorrow.
And by the way, the district did agree with this. Okay. We will work in collaboration to find out these points.
Right. Right. So we can announce this, we can share it next week, and we have scouted out these locations and identified them as locations that are kind of population centers that are farther away from, again, our core communities, and that have good reception at the cradle points. So they'll be stationed there from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. These are wireless access points that are mounted to one of our school buses. They operate off the school battery, so the bus will be there, it'll be parked, locked, and anyone that needs to access it will be district device, like a district Chromebook, district laptop. They can go and park in the bus and connect to the internet and work as long as they need to. So we intentionally identified these be used, at least for now, and this could change. We have another list of other potential places that we could potentially adjust to if we need to. Just working through the permissions process. And these are the farther out because the other partner that we have is we were able to work with one of our longtime vendors, CommScope Ruckus, that we use to purchase a lot of our wireless access points in our schools from, and also Howard for Education, which is one of our vendors that we work with as well. And they together were able to donate 10 exterior grade wireless access points that we can use to connect to our school networks. So what we've done is we've already worked on getting one in every community in the school set up so that at least one parking lot area in one school in each community is covered. That's what we've done with the first 5, and we have an additional 5. So we have enough to do parking lots in all the school parking lots. We just haven't been able to get in that because they just came in about a week ago. So we have on I think what he gave you a listing of the parking lot areas in each community that already are operational and will be available to the public to use in the same way. And that will be basically connected to our school network, but again, only accessible for district devices. So we're trying to use those two in tandem, the school hotspots in the parking lots for our core communities, and then the rotating buses in our more outlying areas to try to bring opportunities for students and families that need some higher quality internet to have a way to get to it a little bit easier.
That is good news.
Do we have to have somebody man those buses while they're sitting there the whole time?
No, sir.
Who's parking a lot illegal?
First off of that.
We already been parking them at some of these places? We've already been parking them?
All the places on this list have been tested.
Gotcha.
Good
Some of
thing.
them were actually crazy, ridiculous facts. It surprised us some. One of them, for example, was the entrance to University Oaks between here and Archer. We were getting speeds there at okay.
Gotcha.
I think it's a great attempt we're, doing and trying, but that's another one of those things I sure would like to follow up on too and keep us up on progress of that.
Will we be able to tell how many people are using it?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will qualify that, Mr. Director, we can tell that for the bus and our hotspots. It may not be as easy for the ones in the parking lots, but I think you visually see very competitive.
When do you officially start using the hotspots, churches and so forth?
The hotspots on the lists that they have are operational now. Again, we have about 5 more that we've still got to put in place in some of our other schools.
These are all operational?
The one, you're looking at the schedule for the cradle ones, which are the bus numbers. So we were going to make an announcement to the public tomorrow and start the rotation next week.
Cradle.
Starting a rotation?
Yes, because if you see the buses are colored, we have 4 buses. So we kind of have one focus on more or less each of our communities. So there's one bus that will be rotating between 2 locations in Williston to start with, one for 2 locations in the Bronson service area, one in 2 locations in the Chiefland service area, and one will be shared by Cedar Key and Yankee County, since they're smaller schools. And we can adjust this as need be. This is just how we're trying to start there.
There'll be a rotation schedule with you.
That's what you have there. It's on different days of the week. Each of those buses will be at one location 3 days a week and another 2 days. The bus mounted hotspots have an area that they'll cover. We haven't been able to prove exact, it kind of varies depending on what your section is, but an area immediately around the bus, an area that they could park or sit or whatever and work. And so I will say that I'm very thankful because it has been a bit of a challenge trying to find locations that are safe, visible locations that we can use for this. And so you can see on the list that we have partnered with quite a few different churches and organizations that have allowed us to use their facilities, their parking lot facilities for this. So we are very grateful for their cooperation.
So they can do their homework on these computers and go back home and work on them.
Yes, or if there's, for example, if there was a teacher that had videotaped a lesson and uploaded it to Canvas, and maybe they have reception at home that's good enough for them to do the basic activities, but streaming the video is a challenge, they could potentially go to one of these locations to see that video.
So you're going to announce this tomorrow?
That was the original goal. We want to share with the board and make sure everybody comes out and bring it. And it will be evolving, you know, as we see different needs, we can adjust the schedule for where the buses go. And like I said, we do have other locations that we're scouting, maybe potential places where they could park.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Edison. Start with board comments. I'll start with Brad.
I don't have a whole lot. I just, it's a tremendous feat that's been taken on in, I don't even know, 5 or 6 weeks. And I appreciate everybody's dedication to it, including the teachers in the classroom. I know that I would be the most challenged digitally person in this room and probably the county. We instituted a new one through the cloud in my business 2 years ago, and I'm still learning. So I appreciate what some of the maybe older generations going through, because I mean, I saw my first computer in middle school, and it was a lot bigger than the ones we use now. But so I would definitely be calling in every day to Melissa and you all to get answers, because I understand it, and I've heard some from some of the teachers, and I get it. I just encourage everyone that this would be one of the times where probably our younger generation, who's more digitally receptive, may be able to help people like me. And we do it in my office every day. My 23-year-old or 24-year-old that works in the office at the graduated University of Florida has to help me daily in our stuff. So a unique world we live in. Our community has seen some bad things over the past week or two, and we sure need some prayers towards some healing of the communities and some coming together, and thought and prayers towards that would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yep, same with Brad said. I appreciate everything everybody's done. Ms. Wade, I remember you saying that you guys were doing a surgical approach to kids that are quarantined, and I've watched that. You guys have done a really good job handling whatever comes your way. I have a quick question. The E23 cleaning product, who do I ask about that? It's just, I've got several calls about
I can answer a little bit of it.
Not really a question, I guess, but just to kind of reiterate, I've heard from a couple of teachers and kids that kids have been using it. And so I looked into it a little bit, and the warning label, I think it's a danger label. And I know we did the custodian training. I don't know if this was part of the training, but it's pretty bad. I know it's been around a long time, but to use it numerous times during the day, not always wiping it off the desk, I'm a little bit concerned. I don't know if we could send like a memo out to everyone to make sure no kids touched it, or who did.
At every school, we didn't send it to everyone. We had a training at every school with the custodians and requested an administrator at every school. Most schools did have an administrator, some schools didn't. We handed them some paperwork and went over detail, and administrators took notes. This product we've been using for 4 years. We've never had any issues with it until then. Till now, the frequency of use may be an issue.
Right.
I was also told that teachers were putting it on the desk and kids were wiping it off. We have not okayed that in any way.
Right.
Kids, it should be sprayed on the desk with the kids sitting there.
Right.
To start with.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what to say about that. The children shouldn't be wiping it off.
Right.
We provided the product for them to use if they want to. We can't control how often they use it. So I know, like anything else, some people are more sensitive to stuff than others. We've got to cover a big area. To me, it's no different than we print papers for everybody. If you can't read it, then you have to put glasses on. We can't provide you the glasses. It's an analogy I think of. We can't fit every need. And I don't know you know, every chemical that we can provide is gonna have a warning label of some side effects. Spring water probably does, but,
I know, maybe we could send an email out just saying, keep it to custodial use. Because just the warning, I don't know, maybe the teachers that aren't using gloves, and it's getting in their eyes, and I don't know, I've gotten phone calls about it, and then I looked into it, and I'm like, it is a danger. There are 4 or 5 levels, 0 being, you know, and then warning caution, this is a danger, so I'm like, well, we need to make sure kids don't have access to it, and maybe even teachers.
and in our training, we stress that it needs to be out of reach of children on a shelf where the custodians know where to look for the bottles and refill them, and we provided it as a means to help the teacher, not hurt them.
Right.
Or other staff, not just teachers, I'm not just saying teachers, you know, we've got aides, we've got other staff that could use it. And, you know, the alternative is not providing anything, because I, for one, know a teacher very well. It's my girlfriend, and she had already been making plans of buying a bunch of products to try to keep her room clean. So, you know, it's one thing if you don't. We got some gloves. Somebody else, if I was having a problem with it, I would buy myself some gloves before saying somebody else, you know, provide me something. I don't know about it, you know.
And we did address that.
Okay.
And Brazy and Brazy,
And, you know.
we all got together.
The custodians have gloves.
Administrators, we've asked them to check with their custodians, we've asked them to go back and check with
And-
their teacher, they had them done everything.
Okay, that's great,
And
yeah.
the only thing about providing disposable gloves is having, you know, the custodians clean one time a day with the disposable gloves as they go around. If we do that, first off, we have trouble getting the gloves, because it's like everything else now. And the cost of them has almost doubled.
Yeah, I didn't do it,
Let
didn't
me
address.
take that back. Don't quote me on that. The price has increased a lot. Brandon's not here to tell you.
Yeah, it's
Right.
increased a lot.
And so, I mean, I just don't know, I'm open to suggestions, and I think we all.
No, I didn't know an email had already been sent out. I've gotten several phone calls just from teachers, so that's great. You guys have already.
It was last week, the week before, every bottle was labeled, thankfully Ms. Lewis brought her daughter to work that day, so every bottle was labeled, like I said, the OSHA guidelines have been sent out now to the administrators to get with their custodial staff to ensure that it's going out to teachers, so we have done.
Okay, great.
What we can to try to upgrade it out.
I think some people's going to use it more, you know, just as a, you know, way we as humans are. Somebody's going to be overboard, somebody's not going to use it as much. I don't know, some people, I wish I had an answer, but that's the product that we had prior to all the COVID coming out, been using, and it met the requirements, it killed the virus, so it was just natural for us to provide it for them to use.
Y'all heard me talking, I don't really have anything. I'm doing a good job, stay with me.
Two quick things. Cedar Key had their first volleyball game last Friday. We played, which was a unique thing because Cedar Key played against Swanee High, and the Swanee High coach was a Cedar Key graduate, and Cedar Key was victorious. So, but it was nice to see Laura Hodges back in the Shark Tank. So, and other than that, thank you for all you do.
Thank you. We had our first advocacy committee virtual yesterday, and we are not going to have our annual joint conference in December. It'll be virtual. And so they have put, they've asked